The Noble Queen, a Shadow Slave fanfic by author NobleQueenBee. Chapter 276-300. The portcullis key was a copy made by the spell, but even the original artifact had been altered by a sorcerer. That sorcerer, Noble now knew, was Ender. What a strange thing. Noble thought back to when she had received the key. Her student Catfine had only been a sleeper then. The girl had not fully understood her power. When Noble had asked if she could see the future, her student's response was frustratingly vague. Now Catfine knew that her aspect involved finding where things belonged. Finding their home. And for some unknown reason, Cat felt strongly that the key belonged with Noble. Well, it had taken years, but Noble finally knew the reason that the strange black ball had ended up in her care. The key was with her to unlock their freedom from this nightmare. Or at least she hoped so. We will find out soon enough. Noble ran over the logistics one last time in her mind. Ideally, the ball would enter above the platform a split second before the shards so it had time to get centered. Noble wasn't positive if it was contact with the stone or simply being over it that activated the enchantment, so she planned for every eventuality. The lack of certainty is also why the shards were placed around the platform and not gathered in one spot. Even if this worked, one shard taking all the power at once might short-circuit the system and ruin all of Noble's hard work. Such nice shards, Nickel lamented, eyeing one of them with admiration. They better be. They have to replace the ones belonging to the tyrant. The queen huffed. They are perfect. Sarai held up her thumb to encourage her. When the soul shards of the Lord of the Mountain were missing, Noble knew that they must have been part of what fused with the heart. That explained how Ender had grown so powerful so quickly. When he absorbed the heart, he had taken in a vast amount of essence as well. By extension, when Council was destroyed, the tyrant was weakened considerably from the loss. The heart was a mysterious creation. Since the portcullis key was a memory instead of a gift from Ariel, Noble did not believe it had any soul shards residing deep within it. The only shards anywhere close to the same value were within the Bloom of Doubt. So Noble had killed the terror. Now it was time to see if her effort was enough. Noble looked at the platform with a complicated expression. This was the crux of the nightmare. Not just protecting Crestfall from a tyrant, but protecting Crestfall from all of the things seeking to destroy it. Ender, King Cry, and the Vicious Blossom were all a threat to the city-state's well-being. They were gone. Now, all that was left was to replace the barrier to preserve what was left of the land. Here goes nothing. Noble put on a bright smile even though her insides were in turmoil. She had been under so many outside influences for months that it felt weird to have the emotions be all her own. Excitement, fear, hope, and anxiety, all of them and more churned inside her as she checked one last time to make sure everything was right. It was as perfect as it would ever be. Any additional delay would be stalling. The night would all too soon be over. Letting her eyes swirl naturally, Noble placed her entire attention on the task. Better get this right the first time. The ball lifted out of her hand, spinning slightly as three small trails of silver whizzed across its surface. The three of them were afraid, but not enough to power the ball, so it remained idle. Under Noble's guidance, the 5 soul shards lifted too, hovering at the edge of the vertebrae with invisible energy. Everything froze in the air like a held breath. Then, all at once, the ball moved to the center of the large circle followed almost immediately by the shards. All 3 humans froze, bracing themselves for an unexpected calamity. But nothing happened. A small worry sprouted in Noble's mind that the platform might be broken. But before she could entertain it, she let go of all 6 objects to rest on the ancient bone. The instant they touched the surface, the world around them changed, humming to life. Noble. Nickel furrowed his brow. It's not me, the queen said quickly. Whatever was happening was now in the hands of the chamber, not her. Their fates were no longer in their hands. If they ever had been. The 5 shards spun like ballerinas on a stage around the key. Slowly at first, then moving at increasingly frightening speeds. The ball itself began to rattle as if trying to find a rhythm of its own. No, a beat, a heartbeat, Noble corrected herself. The dancers spun so fast that they began to crack. The cracks grew until the shards disintegrated into a beautiful mist. Is that what essence looks like? Noble watched in awe. She couldn't describe what she saw, but it was nothing short of magical. The ethereal mist raced toward the ball and coalesced around the bouncing orb. The key shimmered darkly as it stopped rattling and started rolling in a circle. The mist thinned into translucent strings. As the ball rolled, the strands began to wrap around the key like yarn. By the end, the ball looked the same and also completely different. Everything went still. Did it work? In answer to her question, the spell whispered in her ear. Your memory has been destroyed. Noble hung her head. But the spell wasn't done. Its voice seemed to sing. You have received an attribute, Kingdom Keeper. What? Stunned, Noble didn't hear the rest of the words. When she lifted her eyes, she saw the ball's shimmery surface begin to thump. Once, twice. The third time jump started a beat that mirrored Noble's own heart. It was the most beautiful sound that the queen could have heard. Energy flowed from the pedestal into the ground. With each beat, the world around them became a little brighter. Soon Sarai doused her flame, letting the cavern wall bathe them in crimson light instead. Arteries. Nickel studied the patterns on the wall. Blood. Sarai clapped her hands excitedly. The beast god is the god of blood. Does that mean, did we do it? Nickel pursed his lips. We did something. Noble nodded. Holding out her arms, Noble showed them the gold bands on her wrists. They were warm and humming with energy. We did it. In the corner of her consciousness, Noble could feel the edges of the nightmare begin to fray. The world wavered like a bubble about to pop. That could only mean one thing. Noble's joy could not be contained. She was finally getting out. The three friends exchanged relieved smiles. All they had to do was wait a moment longer. That moment felt like an eternity. Finally, everything around Noble went dark and the starry void appeared before her vision. Then she heard the second most beautiful sound that had graced her ears that day. It was the voice of the spell. Prepare for appraisal. Prepare for appraisal. Can it really be? The starry void was vastly different than the red glow of the heart's chamber. Slowly but surely, little pricks of light showed up in the darkness to confirm she was no longer in the ancient kingdom. It took her eyes a few moments to fully adjust. It would take even longer for her mind to comprehend what had just happened. After months in the nightmare, she had finally broken free. It sounded too good to be true. As if to contradict her, the spell spoke. Awakened. Your trial is over. With measured cadence, it summarized her harrowing ordeal. A fair noble entered as the sole heir of a kingdom ruled by a fire-fisted queen. The young lady was determined to escape her fate no matter the cost. The crown found her anyway. During her brief reign, neither traitors, nor tyrants, nor even a terror could keep the young woman from protecting the people she was meant to rule. When the world fell apart, she held it together and replaced the heart to become not only the queen but also the kingdom keeper. Noble found the summary by the spell interesting and strange. It made her look far better than she felt she had done. And it called me fair. Based on her students' recounts of their appraisals, Noble had long suspected that the spell had certain preferences. Though what those preferences were was anyone's guess. It seemed that Noble's performance had garnered at least some praise from the bodiless voice. The spell continued without regard to her thoughts. It began to list all of her victims. You have defeated a dormant monster, crag beetle. You have defeated an awakened beast, fractured geode. The spell's voice went on for some time. You have defeated a fallen demon, mountain regent. Once it finished with the hunt, it moved on to those slain in the final battle. You have defeated dormant beast, soaring sentinel. You have defeated a transcendent demon, Kosi the Simkus. Noble tried to block out the words of the voice in the void, but they resounded like thunder in her head. Kosi, sweet Kosi. It didn't matter that he was just a figment of the nightmare. The feelings and affection she had for him were real. Losing him was always going to be hard, but having his name on her list of kills was almost unbearable. Thankfully, the clinical recitation of her appraisal continued without pause. Creature after creature was named until Noble lost count. She was very glad there were no human victims among her casualties. Even though finishing Ender meant justice for Kosi, Noble was glad that Nickel had helped exact that final vengeance. It was not her alone seeking revenge. Finally, the spell ended with the victory that mattered to her most. You have defeated the fallen terror, Bloom of Doubt. You have restored the heart to the kingdom of Crestfall. You have received the attribute, Kingdom Keeper. Your determination is commendable. Final appraisal. Amazing. A truly noble queen. Noble felt something odd in the way the spell gave its final verdict. It really expected me to die, didn't it? Well, she had proved it wrong. The voice in the void seemed to approve of her defiance, encourage it even. You have received a true name, Child of Promise. There was no floor in the void, yet Noble felt a shock like she had touched the ground. What? The third seal is broken. Awakening dormant powers. Noble was about to ascend. It had been years since she had exited a nightmare. Back then she had been young and frightened. Now she was, in a word, relieved. Something inside her woke, causing a surge of power within her. Her body felt different, like it was being pulled apart and formed into something better. Something stronger. Noble's body and soul, which she could usually easily separate in her consciousness, suddenly began to mix and meld under the inferno of power now coursing through her. Suddenly, Noble could sense her soul and body knit together. The two entities became one inseparable whole. The change was profound. The level of control Noble had over her essence went under a qualitative change. She was powerful. The feeling was pure rapture. There was only one thing that could top the euphoria that she was experiencing just now. And with any luck, she would see that man's handsome face very soon. So she let her body finish the transformation and imagined the happy times to come. When the change completed, the fire inside her slowly cooled as a refreshing chill seeped into her bones. Noble felt like a new person. In many ways, she was. As Noble continued to assess her body, the spell broke through her reverie. Awakening aspect ability. Aspect ability acquired. Noble froze, awaiting the next words. Would she get something useful for her life? Good for combat? Or quirky and difficult to manage? With the spell, any or all of these were a possibility. After a moment, the spell finally whispered into her ear. Aspect ability name, Weight of Doubt. Your aspect ability, Light as a Feather, has evolved. What a boon. Noble summoned the runes to take a closer look at the flood of information she had received. Name, Noble. True name, Child of Promise. Rank, Ascended. Noble stared at the true name, wondering at the meaning behind them. That is what the man had called her at the end of her first nightmare. Had it been a coincidence, or had the spell known then that it would bestow this name officially on her someday? I cannot believe that it was an accident. The spell seems far too intentional to let something like that happen without its design. But there was no proof to back up Noble's claim. She would never know for sure, so she continued reading to the attributes. Attributes: Clarity, Quick Study, Kingdom Keeper. Aspect: Mentalist. Aspect rank: Sacred. Innate ability: Window to the Soul. Aspect abilities: Light as a Feather, Hidden Feelings, Weight of Doubt. Noble focused on her new attribute and ability. The new runes shimmered in the darkness. Attribute: Kingdom Keeper. Attribute description: Those around you are safer while they are under your care. That's promising. Noble wasn't sure exactly what that meant, but the idea of keeping her family safe was more appealing than she could say. The second set of information was just as interesting. Of course, her first two abilities were familiar to her. Aspect ability: Light as a Feather. Ability description: The world around you must bend to your will. You can levitate and move objects as you see fit. This was the ability that had evolved. It took Noble a moment to realize what had changed. She could always move objects. But the wording before had been that the world must respond to your will. Now it said bend. What exactly did that mean? The next ability, for better or worse, remained the same. Aspect ability: Hidden Feelings. Ability description: Emotions are a tricky business, especially when you have the ability to influence others. Depending on your desire, you can lift others' spirits, darken their mood, or enrage an enemy into a frenzy. At least I don't have to figure out anything new with that one. Now, below her other abilities, a third item was present. Aspect ability, weight of doubt. Ability description. A clear conscience can be lighter than air while a burdened one can sink like a stone. You can change the weight of objects at will. Noble read the runes and then read them again. I can already lift things and now I can change their weight. Was that a redundant power or a boost? Perhaps it was both. Or neither. Time would tell. Your ascension is complete. A smile came to Noble's face. She had survived. And she was a master. The spell whispered the words she had been longing to hear for months. Wake up, Noble. Your nightmare is over. Noble blinked. The void disappeared and she was suddenly moving at great speed. Where would she land? Most people who became masters had their new bodies placed where their old one was left behind. But she hadn't left a body in the waking world. She had accidentally taken it with her into the nightmare. That was unheard of for an awakened. Now she could feel herself soaring through space uncontrollably. In the center of her vision, Noble could see a prick of light. It was small at first, but it grew faster than Noble could process. It looked vaguely familiar, but before she could register what it was, she broke through a barrier, shattering it like glass. Noble screamed. The world around her was suddenly effused with overwhelming brightness and indescribable pain. Had she died while trying to get home? Dash 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 dash. In the bright morning light, the stone boar was already hard at work. His nose to the ground, he sniffed around the base of the gate to search for any sign of anomaly. The echo could get closer than his master, who watched from a small distance away. Find anything. The boar lifted his head and snorted before going back to his task. The researcher nodded and marked down the findings. Are you almost done, awakened Jeremy? A soldier called anxiously from the top of the wall. He didn't like that the researcher was so close to danger. It had been a long time since anything had come out of the gate, and the guard would like to keep it that way. The man pushed back his dark blonde locks and glared up through his glasses. I will let you know when I am finished. Jeremy shook his head. Does he think research can be rushed? Rather than anger one of the vassals of valor, the soldier simply nodded. Very good. Please tell us when to lower the rope to get you out. Jeremy tipped his chin in acknowledgement and went back to his work. If he were being honest, he wanted to be done with this project as soon as possible. His usual work with memories was far more interesting. If not for his boar echo, Jeremy was pretty sure that he wouldn't have been assigned this job at all. But those he served wanted to know what was special about this gate that made a human be able to pass through it. They claimed it was vital to humanity, but he doubted it. Just in case it was, he would do his best to have his echo sniff out anything special that there was to find. So far, he had nothing to show for his effort. Not that he minded. No results meant that he would honestly have nothing to report and could get back to the work he enjoyed more quickly. One more solid sweep of the area would make his conscience clear that he had done all he could. Gunther, let's. The boar lifted his head and his two stone tusks glowed softly. What do you have there, buddy? Jeremy lowered his datapad and moved closer. The bottom edge of the gate was wavering slightly more than usual. Awakened Jeremy. The soldier yelled. I'm being careful. I know not to touch the gate, the man answered over his shoulder. But the guard's voice only became more frantic. What are you doing? I'm just looking at an anomaly, Jeremy frowned. The guard couldn't see the spot from his angle, so why was he acting so crazy? Gunther grunted again. This time his stone horns shone brightly. Lifting his head, Jeremy realized why the soldier was concerned. More and more pinches could be seen on the wavering gate. Stitches were being pulled, causing the tear in reality to become unraveled. That isn't me. Jeremy stepped back quickly and pressed his back against the fortification's wall. Dropping his datapad, he summoned his weapon while Gunther placed his heavy body between himself and his master. The gate suddenly crumpled like paper before shattering completely. Jeremy shielded his eyes, but no glass tumbled down. Instead, a screaming nightmare creature did. What in the spell? Jeremy lifted his shield and axe, preparing to fight. Only, the nightmare creature did not look like anything he had seen before. Because it was a woman. She was clad in a surcoat cinched at the waist. Her brown hair fell loosely down her shoulders while her eyes swirled in mesmerizing patterns. Was he hallucinating? Dash 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 dash. Blast it, that hurt. The collision felt like she had been cut by 1,000 knives. She instinctively summoned the loyal tabard to cover any wounds. Am I dead? Noble asked, dazed. You are very much alive, a deep voice answered, startled. Squinting, Noble could see a young man with his back against an impossibly large wall. Who are you? Jeremy, he lowered his shield. Who are you and how did you get here? At least he seems human. That's good. I'm in no condition to fight. Seeing no reason to lie, the woman smiled weakly. I'm Noble. I just conquered a nightmare and it sent me here. Wait, the Noble. Jeremy looked like he might drop his axe. As in Professor Noble. Noble frowned, confused by his use of her title. Did I have him as a student? Yes, that is me. You are one of the foremost experts on memories. Jeremy looked up at the wall and waved off their guns. Stand down. It is just Professor Noble. The awakened researcher's eyes lit up as he nudged a stone-like boar aside. I have been trying to meet with you for months. I've been a little busy. Noble rubbed her head, but the pounding only grew louder. And you conquered a nightmare. Then you are a master now. Congratulations. Jeremy dipped his head. Who would have thought that I would run into you like this? I am one of your biggest fans. I cannot believe you are here. Thank you, Jeremy, but where exactly is here? Noble looked around at the Walden space. The young man's eyes opened. Why, the NQSC, of course. I crashed through the gate. That was why she was experiencing so much pain. The spell had sent her back the way she came right as the portal collapsed. Her awakened body would not have been able to handle the collision, and her ascended one did not seem like it enjoyed the abuse. But there was one good thing amidst all the pain. Noble held her hands to her cheeks. I'm really back. Even in the joy, a wave of nausea come over her. She grabbed her head. Was the gate that I broke through made of ground? It had somehow activated her flaw. The intense pain made the world feel like it was about to leave her again. Jeremy, can you do me a favor? Of course. Anything. The young man smiled broadly. I think I am about to lose consciousness, and I have a bad habit of floating away. Can you make sure that doesn't happen? Noble glanced up at the men on the wall as sweat began to pour down her brow. She might be able to fly up to them, but her time was running short. Please, get me to the Awakened Academy as fast as you can. Yes, ma'am. Jeremy bowed deeply. Master Noble, welcome home. Noble had no time to respond as her vision slipped to black. Yet the dreams she had were of sweet anticipation. Because Jeremy was right, she was home. Machines beeping, soft talking. These were the first sounds Noble heard when she felt her consciousness return. The noises were garbled at first, like she was coming up from being underwater. But soon the chatter came into focus. Two voices near her feet were in deep discussion. And she just popped out of the gate like an egg out of a chicken. A high-pitched voice whispered. That's what I heard, a second woman answered. The people gossiped idly. If they are talking like that, I must not be in any danger. Does it take 2 nurses to check vitals? A familiar healer asked as the door opened. No, ma'am, the nurses answered in unison. Then shoo. Let Noble rest without your gossip. Noble rasped the healer's name. You see, you've woken her. Shoo. Go get the doctor. Noble felt a warm hand clasp around hers. I'm here, Noble. I know you are going to want to move quickly, but there's no rush. Take your time. Umbe's voice and touch were soothing. Opening her eyes slowly, Noble looked down and saw the woman's friendly face. Floating in the air, Noble was being held in place by a series of medical cords that were never meant for such a purpose. Her eyes flicked around the sterile room, and Umbe answered her unspoken question. You are at the Academy Hospital. Awakened Jeremy would not leave until he was sure you were in good hands. The healer reached for a cup of water by the bed. Drink something. Trying to sit up, Noble lowered herself closer to the bed to get the needed length on the cords. Accepting the water, she took a small sip. How long had it been since she last took a drink? Where's Fort? Noble looked around the room for him in vain. She instinctively used essence to search for her husband. To her shock, her sense not only moved more quickly through the hospital, it reached much farther than it ever could before. It felt like she could check the entire academy and then some for any person she knew. But her husband was nowhere to be found. We can talk to Director Fort as soon as you get a little more water in you. Now drink. Umbe's free hand came to her patient's wrist as she ran 2 fingers along a vein. A cooling sensation seeped into Noble's body, releasing the last of the pain that clung to her soul. Along with the healer's soothing voice, it worked to make Noble's worry melt away. How did you manage to cause yourself so much damage right after becoming a master? I knew you were an overachiever, but sheesh. Umbe quirked an eyebrow. I came back through the gate as it closed. I didn't have my memory to pass through it nicely like I did on the way in. Noble clenched her jaw as she remembered the pain. Sensing her patient's angst, Umbe stopped her line of questioning. If you will lower yourself the rest of the way, I will release you from the bed. I appreciate you not destroying it the moment you awoke. Does that happen often? Noble lowered herself to her usual hover less than a millimeter from the bed. She could have easily broken her bonds, but that would have been a gross waste of resources. You'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't. Umbe untied the last strap. Now let me see the water cup. Noble held up the empty container. Let me get you some food, Umbe stood. I will send someone to keep you company while I am gone. The door flew open. Noble, you are all right. I was so worried. Sarai burst into the room, flooded with relief. The fire wielder no longer wore the face of the temperamental Queen Amira. She looked just like the bubbly baker that Noble knew and loved. The energy coming from her was as overwhelming as it was delightful. The floating woman couldn't help but smile. I am happy to see you too, Sarai. The women hugged, and the beeping machine suddenly flatlined. Umbe rushed across the room to turn off the monitor. She picked up the communicator hanging from her waist. False alarm in room 23. Umbe graced Noble with a long-suffering glare. You are going to give someone a real heart attack with that nonsense. She set about disconnecting the rest of the electrodes with a small smile. I came as soon as I could. You are all over the news channels. Woman spat out of gate. Look. Sarai pulled out her communicator and showed Noble the screen. Frey had been hard at work. In only an hour or so, he had managed to not only report all he knew but had gotten an interview with Jeremy about his feelings on the event. Noble chuckled softly about the unnamed woman that came out of an errant gate before destroying it. It is probably the best that they didn't say your name, Sarai shrugged. I am sure Fort made sure to keep the mentions of me out of the press. Noble smiled as she handed back the device. Where is Fort? Is he on his way? Sarai winced. Umbe cleared her throat. I will go get that food. You must be starving. I will also see what is keeping the doctor so we can clear you for discharge. Sensing both their moods shift, Noble's smile faded. The open door slammed shut before Umbe could escape into the hall. Noble's eyes swirled. She spoke slowly. Where is my husband? Umbe looked at Sarai, who nodded. Go and get the doctor so Noble can be discharged. I'll handle this. I'll be back shortly. The healer tentatively touched the doorknob and then slipped out into the corridor so the ladies could speak. The beautiful baker smiled brightly. That door thing was pretty neat. Sarai looked at the opening. And quite dramatic. Is that part of your new ability? You'll never guess what mine is. Sarai. The redhead nodded. You want to know about Fort. Unfortunately, there is not much to tell. The government is being very tight-lipped, but I think he is in a meeting. The agent I spoke to said they had had too many false alarms and he could not disturb the director unless it was an emergency. I told him it was but. They both fell silent as something crashed outside. Hurrying to the window, the ladies found a PTV had collided with the pole outside the medical facility. The driver was already gone. Perhaps they had been in distress and needed help that badly. But PTVs weren't even allowed on the academy grounds except in special circumstances. It must have really been an emergency to make an exception. Whatever had happened, Noble hoped the people were all right. A moment later, shouting in the hall erupted as the turmoil from outside spilled into the hospital. Noble wasn't sure whether to intervene or keep her nose out of the brewing drama. That was until she heard a voice speak over the nurses that sounded as deep as thunder. "I don't care what protocol is. I am going to see my wife." That's when Noble realized the emergency that had caused the accident outside. The door flung open as Fort pushed past a man in a white coat. Either Noble's husband had grown incredibly strong in her absence or the awakened doctor was trying not to hurt him. "Director Fort, I must insist." The doctor tried. A security guard was in the doorway as well, yet his arms hung idly at his side. "Leave," he told the group of medical personnel trying to make their way into the room. "Now." Sarai winked at Noble before helping the stunned hospital staff to comply. The door shut with a soft click, leaving the couple alone. Noble stood by the bed, frozen in place. She looked down at her hospital gown and blushed heavily. This is not how she expected her reunion with her husband to go. Fort's face was drawn taut as he studied the woman before him. He was angry, confused, and overcome with a myriad of emotions. "But then, Noble?" he asked tentatively. "Fort," Noble answered, unsure of the question he was asking. He pinched himself. Tears filled his eyes. "I've had this dream so many times. But, you're really here." "I'm really here," the woman answered. "I'm home." Fort looked as handsome as ever. He had aged since she last saw him, probably from stress, but to Noble, he was the most gorgeous sight she had ever seen. It is you." Fort took a step forward, still unsure of what he was seeing. His strange reaction made Noble wonder how many times his dreams had turned to nightmares when he finally found his wife. The man looked as if he thought Noble might turn into a monster any moment. She floated toward him and placed her hand on his chest. His heart was beating wildly. Remaining perfectly still, Noble let Fort study her as long as he needed. Slowly, his hand reached up to push back a strand of hair from her face. His fingers ran along the side of her cheek and down her jaw, sending the sensation of fire across her skin in his wake. "Noble," Fort said, this time with conviction. His eyes pierced into her soul, making her feel seen for the first time in months. "I know I look a mess." Noble was suddenly self-conscious. "You're perfect." Fort did not wait for a response. He pressed his lips against hers as the fingers against Noble's face moved to entangle themselves in her hair. Noble's hands instinctively slipped around his neck, pulling him deeper into the kiss. All of Fort's emotional defenses dropped, allowing his full, unadulterated love to splash upon her consciousness and mingle with her own. Feeling his strong arm wrap around her waist, Noble knew she was finally home. This is so much better than ascending. The joy that flooded her senses was beyond words. She reveled in the warmth of Fort's touch, the scent of his skin, and the taste of his kiss. It was intoxicating, and far too brief for her liking. Her husband pulled away to take a gasp of air, and Noble realized she had nearly suffocated him. Not that he minded. The smile on his face as well as the twinkle in his eyes spoke of how much he had enjoyed the exchange. Fort refused to let her go. Noble rested in his embrace. "I didn't want to believe it." The man leaned down and caught his wife's lips briefly. "Others have claimed to be Queen Bee, so when Teddy said it was you, I thought I must be dreaming again." He rested his chin on her head and pulled her close. "But I'm not dreaming." "Neither am I," Noble sighed happily. Oh, how she had longed for this moment. They spent a long time in silence just holding each other. Noble felt a droplet hit her hair and she smiled. She understood her husband's emotions, she was crying too. "I'm sorry." Both blurted at the same moment. There was an awkward pause. They pulled apart slightly, each searching the other's face. "I'm sorry for leaving you." Fresh tears cascaded down Noble's face. "I didn't want to. It wasn't on purpose." "Shish," Fort pulled her head against his chest. I know. I interviewed Captain Stice myself. He told me how bravely you fought before he handed over half of the other's voice." I assured him I would get the memory into the right hands. And you did. I heard you wanted to come yourself. Noble pulled her chin up to rest on the man's shoulders. Is that why you are sorry? Because you didn't come. Yes and no. I wish I had been able to help you in the nightmare. But I also know you would have been furious, and I probably would have gotten myself killed trying to jump ranks like that. Fort smiled self-depreciatingly before becoming serious once more. The reason I said sorry was because I did not get here sooner. I was in a meeting with the Chancellor. I came the moment my assistant Teddy got me the message. I noticed you were in a bit of a rush. Noble remembered the vehicle outside. I didn't know you could drive. And when did you get a PTV? Fort coughed. I might have commandeered the Chancellor's car. You stole Gwei's car and crashed it. The floating woman pulled away quickly and looked at her husband in shock. He said I could use it, but I think he meant I could use his driver as well. Fort scratched the back of his head. I'll get it repaired, don't worry. Noble nodded, deciding to let the matter pass. It was a little sweet that he had been so eager, and no one had been hurt. Hopefully. I'm just glad you are here. Enough about me, you are a master. Fort beamed. I had help, thanks to you. Noble was very grateful. I am sure you could have soloed it, her husband said easily. But a little backup is always nice. Noble could feel the underlying tension in his words. He had been confident in her ability but also knew the spell could be cruel. Shaking away the sadness, Fort grinned. And now I have a master for a wife. Master Noble has a nice ring to it. Noble chuckled. Please don't go around calling me that. It's awkward. Unless you want me to go around calling you director. The unspoken question hung in the air. I was promoted from deputy director a couple of weeks ago. A lot has been happening in the time you've been gone. Fort chewed his lip. We can talk about all that later. We will talk about everything when we get home. Noble thought of the house she loved. Then she thought of the people she loved who lived there. Rainy, Brock, Blaze. Noble raised her eyebrows. Were they well? Were they happy and healthy? Fort said a lot had happened. Had Rain been infected by the spell and pulled into a nightmare? The kids. Fort searched the walls for a clock. It was a half day of school and I was rushing through that meeting to go get them when I heard the news about this. Sir, Noble yelled, knowing the other master would not be far away. Sure enough, the woman opened the door almost instantly. Yes. Can you find someone to get the kids from school and bring them home? It was a half day. Noble asked her friend. Got it. Sarai pulled out a communicator. I'll also send in the doctor to get you discharged so you can meet them at the house. Thank you. Noble made a heart with her hands at her friend. Sarai dipped a curtsy. Anything for you, Your Majesty. The door shut softly. Your Majesty. Fort quirked an eyebrow. I haven't heard her call you that before. Noble looked down sheepishly. Oh, didn't I tell you? I'm the leader of a nation now. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. I also received a true name, Child of Promise. Noble got out the words as quickly as she could. Fort's eyes opened wide. His face broke into a wide grin. Forget calling you Master Noble. Her Royal Majesty, Child of Promise has arrived. The man affected a deep bow. Fort, Noble smirked in spite of the censure in her voice. Please don't. She still needed to process those things. Can I just be your wife and nothing more? At least for today. Fort pulled her into another hug. I understand, B. Today we will just be us. I love you. The use of his special nickname for her sent chills down Noble's spine. It was said with such tenderness that it nearly broke what was left of her composure. She pressed her head against her husband's chest and let his heartbeat calm her. I love you too. A soft knock preceded the entrance of a woman in a white coat. The academy had experts in every field including the awakened anatomy. This woman was one of the foremost doctors in the world. I heard you took a little tumble, she said with a pleasant smile. Noble explained what happened, and the doctor asked the appropriate questions. It had been a long time since the floating professor had had a proper physical, so the doctor insisted on a full workup. Fort stepped out to give his wife some privacy and, Noble suspected, to find a communicator to update Chancellor Gui about her status, and the status of his PTV. When he returned, he had a datapad tucked under one arm. "How is the patient?" The doctor smiled. "The damage to your wife's soul seems to be healing nicely. With the proper rest, she should be better than new in a day or two. Until then, be gentle with her. I fully intend to treat her like the most precious thing in two worlds." Fort winked. Satisfied, the physician nodded. Then ascended. "Noble is ready to go. I will sign the discharge order. You're in luck. I have a datapad for you right here." The director pulled the device from under his arm and passed it over. "You will also need to sign a non-disclosure from the government. Of course, we will practice the utmost discretion," the doctor assured Fort as she signed both forms with a stylus. The director's expression turned serious. "I hope so. Because if I hear anything leaked to the news outlets, your staff will be the first ones investigated." "Understood." The woman in the white coat nodded and turned to Noble. "Take care of yourself. You've been through a lot." Her emotions spiked. "And, if I may say, thank you, Master Noble. I don't know that falling out of a gate warrants a thank you." The newly ascended warrior got a strange feeling in her stomach. "I wasn't talking about that. I mean for defending humanity when the gate opened. You saved my husband and son, Nico, on the train that day." Before Noble could confirm or deny her identity, the doctor bowed her head and left. "She knows who I am." Noble's hand flew to her mouth. It wasn't that big of a leap in logic. Noble had fallen out of the same gate that QueenBee had fallen into. Her eyes opened wider. "Does everyone know?" Fort chewed his lip. "All the hospital staff have agreed to stay silent. Thankfully the soldiers who were there when you came out had the sense not to give your name. I don't know much about the man that found you." Awakened Jeremy, Noble filled in his name. "He didn't immediately give up my identity to the reporters when he did an interview. All I know right now is that he is a researcher for Clan Valor. If any of his superiors want more information about what happened, Jeremy will have to give up what he knows." Realizing he was getting more serious than he meant, Fort waved his hand lightly. "But that is a problem for another day. For now, at least, no one will bother you, my precious bee." Noble noted that he had resisted the urge to call her his queen bee, and she was thankful. She truly had the best husband in two worlds. Dewy-eyed, she nodded slowly. "I'd like to go home now, please." It took a few moments for Noble to change out of the hospital gown and back into the loyal tabard. There was nothing else except for her armor to wear. The purple underpinnings of her queen bee armor were rather distinctive, and Noble didn't want to fan the flames of rumors as she exited the building. "Can we invest in a better clothing memory?" Noble was grateful for her surcoat, but it wasn't exactly stylish. At the rate that she was ruining her mundane clothes, it would be cheaper to commission a memory for her to wear daily. "We can get anything you want," Fort said easily. "You've certainly earned it." The amount of credits Noble could earn from her research papers alone after the nightmare would be enough to fund a shopping spree of memories, but the professor had always been frugal. She would save as much as possible for a rainy day. Fort shot her a winsome smile and held out his hand. "Are you ready?" Noble's heart raced. Her fingers brushed against his, sending warmth through her whole body. "As ready as I'll ever be," she managed. "You look beautiful," Fort assured her. "And, if you won't be upset with me for saying so, you look younger too." Noble blushed. "You are just saying that to flatter me. Although that is a wonderful side effect, I merely speak the truth." Fort shrugged. "I wouldn't be surprised if you left me for a supermodel or pop singer now." "I would never." Noble started, but then her husband began to chuckle. She pushed him lightly. "Now take me home before I change my mind." "With pleasure," Fort said a little too eagerly. Taking her hand, he led her out into the hall. Noble had expected to see Sarai waiting for them, but Umbe was there with a note instead. The fiery master had made sure that Rain and the boys had a ride home and had managed to procure a new communicator for the professor's personal use. "I figure your other one is probably long gone. Try not to lose this one in the heat of battle." Noble read the end of the note aloud to Fort. "Sounds like a good plan to me." Fort wrapped his arm around his wife's waist protectively. I don't suppose she left you my wedding ring, did she? Noble looked hopefully at the healer. She didn't. I'm sorry, Umbe shrugged. My ring is in the keepsake. It was the only way to get it home. Noble sighed apologetically. Don't worry about it, Fort clicked his tongue. I'll just have to be extra affectionate in public until you get it back so people know you are taken. I wouldn't want anyone to get the wrong idea. Fort kissed his wife before she could object. Noble rolled her eyes at her husband's antics and bid Umbe farewell. By luck or by design, the hallway to the exit was nearly empty of people. The couple of staff members that they passed stopped and lowered their heads as Noble passed. The professor could sense their reverence, and it gave her pause. They weren't honoring Brenna, Queen of Crestfall. They were showing their respect for Noble, ascended defender of the human world. Strange. But there wasn't time to contemplate how her life was about to change. As she exited the hospital, Noble lifted the new communicator in her hand and waited for it to connect. Hey Mom, it's me. I'm back. Outside, two nicely dressed men were carefully examining the Chancellor's PTV with dubious expressions. The younger seemed more interested than concerned, while the elder's clear eyes took in every detail of the collision as he circled the vehicle. Noble looked at the damage for herself. Like most things at the Awakened Academy, the light pole was made to withstand a hit from an Awakened. The PTV itself was robust, made to withstand an unexpected attack. All in all, the damage was not nearly as bad as Noble had thought when she heard the crash. The elder man in a dark suit frowned when he saw the couple approach. Noble quickly found out why as Fort cleared his throat as he passed the elder man the keys. They were in the PTV and I couldn't wait. Forgive me. This was the Chancellor's driver. The gray-haired man took the keys and gave a snort. His eyes shifted to Noble and they softened. He nodded gently, then climbed into the car and drove away. He didn't say a word on the way over here either. I am unsure if he can't or just won't. Noble had almost forgotten the younger well-dressed man, so his words startled her. She regarded him now. His beady eyes and sharp nose gave him a rodent-like face. He smiled and held out his hand. Greetings, Director Fort. Master Noble. I'm Agent Raton. You've got to be kidding. Surely that's a nickname, and his mother wouldn't have done that to him. Oblivious to Noble's thoughts, Fort shook the man's hand with a small smile. It's nice to meet you. I hope you aren't here to cart me or my wife off for questioning. We've only just been reunited. Raton waved off the concern. Nothing like that. I've been sent to drive you home legally and also deliver this. The government agent presented Fort's communicator, which had been left behind in the director's mad dash to the hospital. The Chancellor said that he better not see you until at least tomorrow if you know what's good for you. Raton gave Fort a meaningful look before chuckling. Shall we? The affable agent led them to another PTV. This one was sleek and black, clearly government issued. Fort leaned toward his wife and whispered in her ear. The feeling of his breath was so pleasant that she almost missed his question. Is this all right? Is what all right? Oh, the PTV. Pursing her lips, Noble nodded slowly. While Noble hated riding in vehicles because of their unpredictable movement, she wasn't exactly dressed for public transit. And with Fort's strong reaction to her looks, Noble wanted to have as few people as possible see her until she could look in the mirror. I'll just float a little higher than usual. It will be fine, she patted his arm lightly. Even if I bump up against the seat and get a shock, it would be nothing compared to what I have already experienced today. Noble shrugged. Fort pressed his lips together. He didn't like his wife talking about pain so lightly. Raton opened the back door for his passengers to enter. Tossing his communicator onto the backseat, Fort stepped back. But before Noble could enter, she was swept off her feet by her knight in shining armor, or rather her knight in a blue blazer. I will keep you safe from the PTV. Just think of me as the wheelchair you should have taken out of the hospital. You're ridiculous. Noble wriggled in Fort's arms, and he tightened his grasp. Sorry, wheelchairs cannot talk. With that, the couple ducked into the car with Raton shaking his head. And they say I'm random. Fort Bride carried his wife into his house despite her protestations. If she had really been opposed to the idea, she could have broken him 100 different ways. So he reveled in the feeling of her body against his. She was light as a feather, as always. And she was back. That part was still hard to believe. He stared at her. She was even more beautiful than he could describe. It was more than just her physical features, though they were now even further beyond his league. Noble was precious to him. When she had left, a part of him had left with her. He had barely felt like functioning, but he had pressed through both for his children and for Noble. As long as he hadn't given up, Fort hoped that she wouldn't either. And she hadn't. Noble was here. He was whole once more. And more nervous than he was willing to admit. He froze in the doorway of their home, afraid that the illusion might break. No, he couldn't think like that. Noble was home with him. Only joy awaited them here. Noble's blush deepened, inviting him to take her lips in his. Fort had barely begun to take advantage of the moment when a voice called out across the house. "Is that my little girl?" "It's me, Mother. Though I'm not exactly little anymore." Noble gave her husband an apologetic pout and he put her down. Fort should have known Lena would be there. His mother-in-law had moved in almost as soon as Noble disappeared. She had been invaluable in keeping the kids in a routine and himself in one piece when he felt close to falling apart. So while he was grateful beyond words for the fantastic woman that his wife called mother, right now he wanted nothing more than to kick her out of his house. But of course, he would never do such a thing. And Noble's excitement as she threw her hands around her mother's neck reminded him that he was not the only one who had missed her. He was so wrapped up in his thoughts that he missed the beginning of Lena's instructions. "I spoke with Sarai and have confirmed that the kids should be home in a moment. There is a meal in the refrigerator that can be heated up as soon as you want it, so there is no need for anyone to cook." "Thanks, Mom." Noble held tight to her mother's hands. "I have plans tonight, which I can cancel if you want, but I thought it might be good to let you have a little bit of family time this evening." Lena studied her daughter's face carefully. "Don't cancel your plans for me, Mom. That isn't fair to you." Noble smiled brightly. "Though I'm curious what kind of plans you have that you didn't immediately cancel when you heard I was home." Fort had a good idea what the plans were, but thankfully the attention was not on him at the moment. "We can talk about all that later," Lena answered easily, drawing a curious look from her daughter. "I tidied up your room and left a fresh set of clothes on the bed. You probably just have time for a quick shower before the kids get here. It seems like you've thought of everything." Noble hugged Lena again. "Thank you." Fort could feel the meaning behind the words. Lena hadn't asked what had happened, merely tried to provide a smooth transition for her to be home again. There would be time for stories later when Noble was ready. For now, they both wanted to provide the new master with peace and comfort. Fort watched the pleasant movement of his wife's mouth as she told them both she would try to be quick. She gave him a small kiss goodbye, which turned into a longer kiss of sweet hello. It wasn't until Lena cleared her throat lightly that Noble finally pulled away with a sigh. "I'll be back in a moment." Fort wanted to follow her. That kiss has practically been an invitation. More than that, a small part of him worried that something terrible would happen to her as soon as she left his sight. But at that moment, the front door flew open. Brock and Blaze hurried into the room and threw their bags on the ground. "Hey, Grandma." "Hey, Dad. How's it going?" From their phone call, Noble knew her mother would be at her home, but in the heat of the moment, she had forgotten. But seeing Lena meant the world to her, 2 worlds even. Her mother had known exactly what to do and say. Even though Lena's mysterious evening plans intrigued Noble, a shower and fresh clothes were far more enticing at the moment. Almost as enticing as that kiss had been. Noble shook off the thought and cleaned herself up. She dressed quickly in the clothes her mother had set out on the bed. Thankfully, Lena knew her daughter's taste and had put out a comfortable top and stylish pants. "Ah, I have forgotten how nice it feels to be in cotton and not armor or a corset." There were many modern comforts that Noble was looking forward to, but not having to be cinched and tied into her clothing was pretty high on her list. "It is good to be home." Hovering over a stool at her vanity, Noble took a brush and hairdryer to her long auburn locks. While she tamed her unruly hair, the floating awakened ducked quietly into her soul sea. It had undergone a transformation. Her core shone brightly, looking larger and more powerful than it had before. The water below shone with its usual iridescence, looking deeper and richer than Noble had ever seen. It made sense. She was far more powerful now that she was a master. A master. That was still too much to process. But she had seen that her ability to sense others' emotions had grown exponentially. It was both frightening and invigorating. Above the shining water, dozens of orbs waited to be plucked from the sky. She had gotten a few new things in the final battle for Crestfall. One shone differently than the others, making Noble's heart ache. She turned away and called another down from the heavens. What had the bloom of doubt given her in the final foray? Having lost her beloved Estoc in the furious struggle to survive, Noble hoped that it would be a weapon-type memory. This time, the spell was kind. A Xiphos formed in her hand. The double-edged, leaf-shaped blade was made of polished steel. Filigreed vines coiled around its waist-like neck, the metal tinged with green. Noble had seen a weapon like this before. It was efficient for slashing and thrusting. While it was a far cry from her delicate Estoc, the weapon was well suited for powerful, hacking blows. Not exactly my strong suit, but I can adjust. Noble turned the weapon over in her hand before gripping the hilt tightly. The small pommel of the sword ended in the image of a flower. The pink bud did not resemble the bloom of doubt, and Noble wondered if this was what the flower should have looked like before it was corrupted. Shifting her attention, she examined the runes. Name: Zenith. Rank: Supreme. Type: Weapon. Description: when the bloom of doubt tried to spread its seed, its life was cut short by a confident queen. Noble blinked a few times. The rank alone was incredible, but that was not what caught the woman's attention. It sounds like it is talking about me. But memories didn't work like that. Had Amira killed the bloom of doubt in the original timeline? Or maybe another queen after her reign ended? That had to be it. Still sounds like it is talking about me, though, and it doesn't say what it is supposed to do. Noble hummed softly. She would have to run a full scan on the sword when she got back to the academy. B2 would be able to give her more insight into the strange blade. For now, the professor was satisfied that it was a quality weapon. While it could never replace her unlikely end, Noble would do her best to treat this weapon with equal respect. "Welcome to the team," she said absent-mindedly. Then she frowned. The blade was perfectly formed, stunning even. But it was front-weighted, pulling Noble's wrist slightly down. "If only you were a little lighter, my friend," the woman joked. Instantly the Xiphos adjusted to her liking, startling her. Was that a hidden quality of the blade? Noble didn't think so. The tiny amount of essence that Noble expended told her that the change was more likely due to her, not her memory. That's when she remembered her new ability. Aspect ability, weight of doubt. Ability description: a clear conscience can be lighter than air while a burdened one can sink like a stone. You can change the weight of objects at will. Apparently Noble only needed to think about changing an object's weight for the world around her to comply. She was very thankful the ability did not require her to specify an exact weight. It just intuitively bent to her will. How did it work? Did it somehow change the object's mass? And for how long would the effect last? Quite a lot to explore. Noble guessed that altering things was not permanent and would require different amounts of essence both to activate the ability and maintain it. Magic worked by its own rules, and the only way she could fully understand them was through trial and error. For now, Noble was satisfied that she could change the weight of her blade using less essence than her body could replenish naturally. Very handy in a duel. A duel. Noble sighed sadly. There would not be any more duels. She was a master now. The Dreamscape was designed for awakened and mundane humans, not her. She would have to find another way to practice her skills. At least she would have Sarai to spar with. Maybe together they could convince Saint Thane to make an arena for masters to practice or even compete. Not that Noble would have time for fun and games anytime soon. She would first need to get her life together and figure out her new place in the world. Something told her that would not be easy. One step at a time, she reminded herself. Taking a deep breath, Noble left her soul sea and set down the hair dryer on her vanity. She hadn't paid much attention to her face in the mirror until now. For better or worse, it had changed. Not to the point that she was unrecognizable, but Noble looked younger, and her skin shone with a subtle luminescence. It wasn't quite as drastic as the shimmering glow in her ever-changing eyes, but the similarity in the aura they put off was unmistakable. Knowing that the path to ascension made one look more attractive and seeing it happen to oneself were two entirely different things. Noble felt suddenly self-conscious. She had never really liked public attention, and now she would be drawing even more of it than usual. That was tomorrow's problem and not something Noble could control. I need to focus on right now. One more brush through her hair and Noble knew that anything else she could do would be stalling. That's when she heard a sound that made her heart clench. In addition to Lena and Fort, two younger voices were happily chirping about their day. She was both glad and sad that they hadn't burst through the door to wrap her up in a tight hug as soon as they arrived. From their chatter, they didn't even seem to know she was home. That was because they didn't. And then Gerald told the teacher that the dog ate his stylus. Can you believe it? Brock's animated voice was infectious as he gave his usual recap of the day to his father and grandmother with the help of his twin. Of course, Mrs. Seidel didn't buy it for a minute. She made him get a pencil, from her desk and write the assignment by hand on synthetic paper. Then Gerald miraculously found the stylus, but it was too late. Can you imagine? Blaze's words cracked at the end, reminding those present just how close his voice was to dropping from its childlike timbre. The boys looked at their father and grandmother, waiting for their enthusiastic response. Mrs. Seidel, is that the name of your teacher this year? Yeah, Grandma, Blaze pursed his lips, you met her on the first day of school. But Lena simply smiled and shook her head. She hadn't been the one to speak. Brock pulled his brother's sleeve. The boy's mouth hung open as he stared behind him. His eyes looked ready to pop out of his face. What? Blaze pulled his arm away from his twin. What's wrong with you? Hello, Brock. Hello, Blaze. The voice said tenderly. Mom. Brock's stunned silence ended in a fretful stutter. He ran full out in the direction of his parents' bedroom. Mom. Blaze turned, scarcely able to believe his brother's words. Mom. Before him was a woman who looked like his mother and yet very different. The quiet aura around her was gone, bursting with energy. Despite the raw power of the woman in front of him, Blaze felt only love and comfort surrounding the person who had been missing for months. The 12-year-old rushed forward, catching up to and passing his brother. He collided with his mother only a moment before his twin, causing a spectacular crash when both boys landed in Noble's arms. Fortunately, the master could handle their bulk easily, so she only floated back slightly to accommodate them. Noble caught them up in a hug, lifting them from the ground in her excitement. They didn't complain, only clung to her tighter. My boys. How I have missed you. Tears streamed down Noble's face. You didn't tell them I was here. She shot Fort and Lena accusatory glances. You know how they can be, Fort shrugged. They hadn't taken a breath yet so I could bring it up. Noble decided she didn't mind. Their genuine joy and surprise at seeing her did wonders for her aching heart. She held them close, working not to squeeze them to the point that she would injure or crush them. She just had so much pent-up love to give them. You're really back, Brock chirped when his mother finally put him down. Are you a master now? Blaze examined Noble more closely. Dad said that he sent Auntie Sarai to help you challenge a nightmare. Did it work? Noble hesitated. She should have asked her husband what exactly he had told them. We succeeded. I am a master now, she answered honestly, Sarai too. So you conquered the second nightmare. That makes you a hero. Brock's chest puffed out a little. Wait until he told his friends at school that his mother was a master. What was the nightmare like? Was it hard? Blaze missed the warning look of his father and grandmother. Fort took a step forward, worry evident in his eyes. Blaze. Holding up her hand, Noble forced a smile. It was very hard, but we can talk about that later. The youngest member of the family nodded seriously. Brock nudged his brother then smiled wide. Okay, more important question. Did you bring me anything? The joke was enough to break the tension that had built. Noble's smile turned genuine as she laughed softly. We can talk about that later also. Right now I want to focus on both of you. When did you get so tall? The two boys suddenly stood up straight, each shoving the other lightly to assert their height dominance. Clicking her tongue, Noble sighed. Pretty soon I will be the shortest member of this family. It felt like just yesterday she was using the boys as lovable headrests when she gave them hugs. Had she been gone weeks or years? Shaking off the sad thoughts, Noble motioned for them to head to the living room. Tell me all about school. You were both in the same class this year. Noble watched Lena duck off to the kitchen and return with a tray of snacks. Noble had eaten a little at the hospital, but her emotions had been in such turmoil then that it had only been a few bites. She was still emotionally all over the place, but seeing the boys, young men, plow through the tray of food without a second thought encouraged her to eat a little more. While she ate, Brock and Blaze filled her in on everything that had gone on in her absence. We started more strenuous combat training, Brock announced. My tutor says I'm a natural with a spear. Spear, Noble had mixed feelings about the revelation. Fort rubbed the back of his neck. I know we were going to discuss getting them a tutor. No, it's fine. Noble smiled. As much as she hated to admit it, the world was becoming increasingly hostile to the human race. No matter where her children went, they would need to know how to protect themselves. Recent experience had proven that she could not always be present to protect them. Equipping them was not a privilege. It was a necessity. You did the right thing. Noble nodded to her husband. Rainey was 14 when we got her a private tutor and you didn't know when I would be able to help with that decision, she finished lamely. Noble had wanted to say if she would return. But she didn't want to think about that possibility now that she was home with the people she loved most, well, most of them. Where exactly was Rain? Her school was closer, but perhaps the boys had gotten a direct ride while she had taken public transit. Or maybe since it was a half day, she had stayed for tutoring. There was also the possibility that she had gone out with friends to relax. Wherever Rain was, at least she wasn't in a nightmare. Coming back to the conversation, Noble listened intently to Blaze's description of his new classes and then witnessed the twins' demonstration of their favorite fighting techniques. I'll help them with that later. Noble decided to smile and nod at their enthusiasm rather than critique. There would be plenty of time to tighten up their stances later. Just as the conversation hit a natural lull, Noble opened her mouth to inquire about her only daughter. But her words died on her lips. The door opened and a dark-haired girl rushed into the room in a flurry of motion. Dad, Grandma, I'm back. Does anyone want to tell me why Teacher Julius came to escort me home from SCH? Rain's bag dropped to the ground at her feet. Mom. Noble's heart clenched. Hello, Rainey. The teen just stood there staring. Unlike her younger brothers, Rain was not happy. Rain stared at her mother in disbelief. Why didn't you tell me you were back? Noble was startled by the question. That's my fault, Fort piped in. I left my communicator at the office, and by the time I got it back, I should have let you know. Rain's eyes filled with tears. Mom. A sob accompanied her movement across the floor as she embraced her mother. Rainey, oh how I missed you. Noble felt her daughter stiffen in her arms. Rain squeezed her mother before suddenly letting go. Welcome home. Knock knock. A pleasant voice called from the doorway. I hate to intrude, but I didn't want to leave without at least saying hello. A man with bushy gray eyebrows peeked in from the entryway. Nonsense, Julius. You could never be an intrusion. Lena waved the man into the room with no small amount of delight. Teacher Julius. Noble had heard Rain say his name but had not processed the information. Master Noble, the elderly gentleman bowed slightly with a grin. Rain stepped aside, allowing Noble to embrace Julius with a bone-crushing hug. The awakened teacher was the only one there who could handle her excitement, and even then he groaned under the pressure. We are very glad to have you back, my girl. And well done for making it through. The pride in Julius's voice warmed Noble in a way she could not describe. Thank you. Julius had been through a nightmare, so he knew of the torture and relief that came from surviving such an experience. He patted her shoulder lightly. I was heading your way when your friend Sir I caught me in the hall and asked me to coordinate picking up the kids. I am very sorry I wasn't there when you woke in the hospital bed. You woke up in a hospital bed. Rain scrunched her face. Upon ascending, I crashed through the gate which I entered. It activated my flaw and knocked me out cold. Noble explained quickly. I was rushed to the awakened hospital, but I'm fine now. I guess even as a master I am as accident-prone as ever, Noble added, hoping to lighten the mood. The teen took in the information with a small nod. I see. Rain took a deep breath. I am very tired. I think I will take a nap before dinner. Thank you, Grandpa Julius, for bringing me home. We can always count on you. She kissed the old man on the cheek lightly. I'm very glad you are home, Mom. Rain kissed her mother too before grabbing her bag and rushing down the hall. Rain. Fort called after the girl. It's fine. Noble stalled his rebuke. It's a lot to take in. Give her some time. Noble could feel all the conflicting emotions inside her daughter. Rather than force her to work through that process through magic manipulation, Noble knew the importance of giving her space. Calling her out publicly would not do either of them any good. So Noble let her daughter leave quietly. As soon as Rain's door shut, Noble felt the torrent of feeling flood the teen's room and leak into the hall. A tear streamed down Noble's face that she feverishly wiped away under the guise of a cough. Unable to resist, Noble offered a small bit of calm to her daughter's room. Her range for such things had increased drastically, and the effort took almost no essence. The offer was resisted for a moment and then embraced wholeheartedly. The teen's emotions, at least for the moment, stabilized. I hope you can nap, Rainy. Noble turned her attention back to the living room. The twins were questioning Julius about the dream realm. I've been thinking, why don't saints just bring sleepers to the dream realm on the solstice to help them awaken without being dropped randomly in the world? Blaze pulled out a datapad, possibly to take notes. Julius looks curiously at the young man. There are very few saints, and while they could, the legacy clans believe in strength over anything else. There is nothing strong about taking the easy way out. Julius answered carefully, trying not to affirm or condemn the method. It was a complicated issue. If you were a saint and we were needing to awaken, you would do the shortcut first though, wouldn't you? Blaze pressed. His analytical mind needed to pursue every possibility. To get you home safely to your parents, I would do it in a heartbeat. Julius nodded. It was an easy promise. Not me. I would fight my way out. I want to be strong. Brock wielded an imaginary spear as he pretended to skewer a nightmare creature. All right, that is enough about that. Lena clapped her hands. Julius needs to go finish his work day and we have taken up enough of his time. Julius cleared his throat lightly. Of course. I will be on my way. You boys be on your best behavior for your mother. Noble, I look forward to reading your research reports when the time comes. Please come by my office when you have the chance so we can have a proper chat. I'd like that, Noble agreed with a dip of her head. Not only would the man be helpful with her research, but he would also be able to give her more information about her newly acquired runes. With the added bonus that the wise professor was very easy to talk to. It's settled then. I'll see you soon. Julius smiled warmly and then regarded Lena with a final courteous nod. I'll show you out. The grandmother stood and smoothed her skirt. The gentleman offered his arm affectionately. I would be honored. Mom, did you know that I won the preliminary track meet last week? Brock pulled Noble's attention from the people leaving. How is she supposed to know that? Blaze scoffed. A track meet? Since when are you on the track team? Noble furrowed her brow. Since I tried out this year, Brock brandished an impish grin. He's always been good at running, it's just usually running into trouble. Blaze elbowed his brother. Now he's Brock the jock. You'll have to come watch me, Mom. Brock ignored his twin. I would love that. I'll need a schedule as soon as possible. Noble smiled. happy to have been included in the preteen's plans. She had many plans to make. How different would her life look as a master? It was hard to tell just yet, but this little bit of normalcy gave her hope that things might just be alright. At least Noble hoped so. With an absent smile, Lena came back into the house and grabbed her handbag. Noble furrowed her brow. You are leaving. Turns out my plans are starting a little earlier than I thought. I need to go home and get a few things, unless you want me to cancel them and stay. Lena paused, giving her daughter a second chance to refuse the privacy that was being offered. Mother, Noble started, only for Lena to pull her aside. I notice that each additional person is draining your emotional reserves. You may be physically strong, but that doesn't mean you need to take on all the world at once. If you need me, I'll be just a message away. I'll be back before morning, so if you are still up, we can talk then. I love you. Noble hugged her mom goodbye. She trusted that Lena knew what was best. Kissing the twins on the head, the grandmother bid them farewell. Fort got a hug as well as a whispered warning. Be gentle with her. With that, Lena ducked out of the house for the day, leaving the family to their own devices. Without a buffer, the afternoon went by quickly. By the end of it, Noble felt more and more at ease. Her body relaxed, slowly believing that this wasn't just some beautiful hallucination that her mind had made up to escape reality. She was back in the waking world. Back to her own life. While everyone in the room wanted her attention, it was because they loved her, not because they were trying to get something from her. The affection Noble felt from her boys and husband was better than any medicine. Home, she thought with a small smile. Noble looked down at her hand hovering above the couch. Ford had intertwined his fingers with hers as they listened to the boys' description of the most recent movie they had seen, The Devil of Antarctica. Feeling the tenderness of his touch, Noble's heart fluttered. I had almost forgotten the way it felt when he held out his hand for mine. I never want that to happen again. As long as he was with her, Noble knew everything would be alright. In answer to her unspoken thoughts, Fort squeezed her hand. I love you, he mouthed silently. She loved him too. Deeply and beyond measure. So when he stood, she felt like the sun was leaving her behind. Of course, he was just heading to the kitchen to heat up the meal that Lena had provided. Noble used her aspect to set the table, much to Fort's objection that she needed to rest, and soon the meal was ready to be eaten. Rain, we are waiting for you. Brock screamed from his seat at the table. Resisting the urge to use her extra sight, Noble instead felt for Rain's emotional signature. The teen had been in a restless sleep but was now slowly moving down the hall. Rubbing her eyes, Rain forced a smile and took her seat at the table. Sorry to keep everyone waiting. Noodles with synthetic chicken were passed around, allowing each person to serve themselves. The hearty broth was as delicious to Noble as if the dead gods had made it themselves. Either because the twins had finally run out of things to say after hours of talking or because the food was just that good, the table went silent for many minutes. Finally, the youngest member of the family broke the quiet meal. So, Mom, would you like to go and see The Devil of Antarctica with us next time we go to the movies? I still cannot believe your dad took you to see that. Noble shook her head. The boys were 12 now, but they were still her babies no matter what anyone said. Fort shrugged. It was your mother, not me. She said it wasn't overly gruesome at least. The director knew from reports how the real fighting was going. The film and reality were so completely different that Fort considered the movie a work of pure fictional entertainment. Mom has seen enough action, Rain chastised as she swallowed her soup. I am sure she has no desire to watch more violence, no matter how exciting. Brock's eyes lit with interest. Is it true? Did you see as much action as the devil during your nightmare? Fort dropped his spoon into his bowl. Brock, it's fine. Noble took a deep breath and smiled at her elder son. I don't know how much this devil of yours did, but I saw my fair share of action. As much as Noble didn't want to talk about all she had been through, it was worse to make a habit of avoiding it. If she waited too long, the topic would become an elephant in the room and put a barrier between her and the ones she had worked so hard to return to. Blaze perked up at her words. Tell us all the exciting parts so we can compare. You know, for purely research purposes. The exciting parts, Noble thought carefully as she savored the food in her mouth. What would interest pre-teen boys the most? Well, one of the first things I did was fight in a raging battle of humans versus nightmare creatures. It was only when the battle was over that they told me it was a hunt for meat. I was battling against fallen creatures so we could have them for dinner. Sounds like something I would enjoy. Brock slurped his broth with gusto. What else happened? Well, I battled a queen in a duel to the death, and then managed to take over the kingdom. Noble skipped over many of the details. You killed a queen. Blaze's jaw dropped open. No, not exactly. Noble winced. But you were ruler of a kingdom. Rain asked carefully. Up until this morning, yes I was. Auntie Sarai and Nee, nice people. Noble saw Fort shake his head and realized that Nickel likely didn't want his involvement spread around. Many nice people helped me to defeat an evil sorcerer, a corrupted tyrant and his horde of minions, and finally, I vanquished a fallen terror. Whoa. Blaze's eyes sparkled. That's amazing. Brock stood from his seat and clapped. Sounds like an amazing adventure, Rain acknowledged with a slight dip of her head. Noble pursed her lips. She could feel the hesitation behind her daughter's words. It wasn't exactly easy or amazing. While exciting at times, it was not something I want to repeat. Rain chewed the inside of her cheek. Well, then I guess it is good you don't have to. I only hope we will be exciting enough for you now that you are back. Rain stared at her food, unwilling to meet her mother's gaze. The words dug like a knife into Noble's heart. How could Rain think that? Hiding how much the comment hurt, Noble smiled a little too brightly. I find all of you plenty exciting. You know what would be exciting? A duel between you and the devil of Antarctica. Brock stabbed the air with his spoon. I bet it would be even more epic than that duel between QueenBee and Mongrel. Fort choked on his food, causing the conversation to be mercifully cut short. The whole family looked on as the director cleared his throat. I'm fine, he rasped after taking a sip of water. Just went down the wrong pipe. Be careful. Noble patted her husband on the back gently as her eyes flicked toward Rain. The girl's face was paler than usual and her mouth hung slightly open. What? Noble asked her. The teen looked away. Nothing. I just realized how late it is, May I be excused? Rain pushed back her chair without awaiting an answer. I'm going to bed. You are still tired. Noble was suddenly filled with concern for a different reason. Rain shook her head. No, it's just, regular tired, not nightmare spell tired. Good night. The teen hurried to her room, leaving the rest of the family to watch her retreating form. What's going on with her? Blaze scrunched his face. She never sleeps this much. Never try to understand the female mind, especially the teenage female mind, Brock answered with a sagely nod. Teenagers, both boys scoffed, drawing an amused grin from their parents. You do realize you will be teenagers in less than a year. Noble pointed out. Details, Brock waved his hand dismissively. We will never be moody like that. Noble glanced toward Rain's room. The girl had acted strangely, but were her actions simply her being moody? Somehow, Noble didn't think so. Even though they hadn't had one in over a year, the boys asked their mother for a bedtime story that evening. Noble suspected it was so they could ask more questions without their father getting onto them. Noble didn't mind. The peppering of idle chatter kept her mind from more serious thoughts. That was until Blaze hit her with a question she wasn't prepared for. Mom, what made you decide to conquer the nightmare without telling us? Noble's mouth opened slightly. I didn't choose to enter the nightmare. You remember that memory I had called the portcullis key. It sucked me into the nightmare. Kind of like how QueenBee fell into the gate. Brock sat up from his pillow suddenly. Noble blinked. One and the same. In fact, wait, does that mean you went into the same nightmare as QueenBee? Blaze also sat up in his bed with wide eyes. Yes, because it all makes sense now. Brock interrupted. Author Sarai is friends with you both. No wonder she went into the nightmare to help. I can't believe our mom knows QueenBee. Blaze stood up on his covers triumphantly. Does that mean you fought together? QueenBee and I are I knew it, you are best friends now. Brock bounced up and down enthusiastically. Internally Noble wanted to plant her face in her palm. Was it so hard to suspect that she might be the famous duelist? It seemed so. The fraudulent facade did too good of a job. Now I'm my own best friend. Don't worry, Mom. Your secret is safe with us. Brock nodded as he crossed his heart. About that, Noble realized the boys were no longer listening. She sighed and lifted them both off of their beds before laying them down and covering them up using her aspect. If you both can keep that to yourselves for now and go to sleep, maybe I'll tell you more tomorrow. There's more. Both resisted the urge to sit up. Their mother nodded, and the twins quickly snapped their eyes shut. Good night, Mom. We will see you in the morning. Coming into the hall, Noble checked the time on her new communicator. It was much later than she thought. She peeked into Rain's room. The girl was sprawled out on her bed still in her clothes from the day with a datapad lying on her chest. From what Noble could see, the girl had been feverishly studying for her upcoming midterms when she had fallen asleep. The light next to the bed was still on. Poor baby, Noble floated silently into the room and switched off the light. Rain mumbled something and then rolled over, knocking the datapad from her bed. Instead of hitting the ground, the precious piece of equipment hovered until it landed gently on the nightstand. Blowing her daughter a kiss, Noble backed out of the room. Finding the living room empty of life, Noble continued to the master bedroom. The bed was already floating with a man tapping on his communicator wearing a quizzical expression. Fort set down the device and smiled brightly at his wife. There you are. I was beginning to get worried. Is everything all right? Is there a reason you didn't tell the boys that I was Queen Bee? Noble fought the urge to be captivated by his smile and asked the question at the forefront of her mind. It wasn't my secret to tell, the man seemed confused by her words. The beautiful woman pursed her lips. Fort sighed and patted the spot beside him on the bed. Noble laid down him and nestled into his arms. At first I wasn't sure what to tell them. You didn't come home when you said you would. And Rain was beside herself because you weren't answering her messages. So I did a search to see where your communicator was to calm her down. About the same moment, the Chancellor called. Fort took a deep breath. It was always unnerving when someone so powerful called directly, and even more unsettling when that call happened outside of working hours. He said there had been an incident and told me to check the news. I couldn't believe my eyes. Someone wearing your armor went through a gate. I left Rain in charge saying I was going looking for you. It all seemed so impossible. It felt impossible in the moment, Noble agreed. I was barely out the door when Sarai called and offered to help. I told her that she needed to wait until we knew more. Deep down I hoped that I would get to the area and that you would have come back through to scold me about how crazy I was for approaching an open gate. And you found Captain Stice instead. Noble's eyes stung with tears though she kept her voice even. She was glad she wasn't looking directly at her husband. Stice looked so weary, but he wasn't willing to leave until he had spoken to someone high up in the government. Apparently, I was high enough to satisfy him. He gave me half of your memory. I have never been so relieved to see an object in my entire life. Although I couldn't contact you, it meant you were alive. Fort's voice cracked, and he squeezed the woman in his arms. I am glad it gave you hope. Noble wasn't sure what else to say. What else could be said about such a moment? Knowing that you were alive presented a different problem. What would I tell the kids? If you were dead, I would have come clean about everything, but there was a chance you could come back any moment. So when I got home, I told them you were in the dream realm and would hopefully be back soon. So that is why they didn't know I was Queen Bee. Noble understood. Her disappearance had been masked. You didn't even tell Rain. Fort hung his head. I dodged all the questions I couldn't answer for a couple of days, but then I had to tell them what I believed to be true. That you had entered a nightmare. Since then, I have been doing a miserable job of holding it all together. I told myself I would let them know everything if you weren't back by the solstice, but I know I should have. His wife shushed him softly. There is no use dwelling on should-haves. Noble could drown herself in her own mistakes. She wasn't about to judge Fort for his. She nuzzled his neck with her head. I am here now, and we are a team. We will get through this together. I love you. I am so glad you are home. Fort pressed his thumb under Noble's chin and lifted it. The kiss he gave her was full of all the emotion she had been feeling emanate from his soul while he spoke. Relief, fear, hope, longing, excitement, and most of all, love. She kissed him more deeply, running her hand along his chest and snaking it up to his neck, but he pulled away. There will be time for that, he whispered, his breath tickling her ear. But I want it to be because you want me, not because you feel sorry for what happened. His smile was weak. He clearly wanted to give into the temptation that the woman before him presented. But just like she could sense his feelings, he could see her emotions in her eyes. Noble sighed. What then? You want me to sleep? Fort nodded slowly. It seems like a good idea. You have your post-nightmare interview in the morning, and some shut-eye will help you be ready for it. So soon? Noble shook her head. No, of course they try to do them as quickly as possible. That works. It is better to get it over with. The professor shifted awkwardly and bit her lip. There is only one problem. I don't have anywhere to sleep. Her pod was for an awakened body. She could go there, but it was unnecessary. Staying here on the comfy bed posed its own problems. Noble would float to the ceiling as soon as she lost consciousness. I have the perfect place for you to sleep. Fort opened his arms wide. I will stay up and hold you until morning. You may have somewhere to be in the morning, but I do not. Let me be your pillow and we can find a more permanent solution tomorrow. Noble hesitated, but the offer was too good to pass up. Wrapping her arms around his chest, the floating awakened allowed her husband to do the same to her. Then slowly, she had her first real dream since she was a teen. Hello, my love. Noble turned in the field of beautiful green with a smile on her face. It faded instantly, replaced by a cold chill in her heart. The one who had called out to her was blonde and handsome. And deranged. Noble ran with all her might, her feet pressing their full weight into the bed of verdant grass. It did no good. As hard as she ran, the figure chasing her was faster. He snapped and the ground below her feet disappeared. Noble took to the air, trying to fly fast and far beyond the disappearing horizon. But no matter what she did, her pursuer closed the gap between them until he finally took hold of her arm. Looking back, Noble screamed, "Let me go." Counsel's face drew closer to hers as his lips twisted into a cruel smile. You're mine. Noble turned her head, but everywhere she looked, Ender's face was there to mock her. His arms snaked around her waist, making her skin crawl. His touch was suffocating. She tried to breathe but no air would enter her lungs. She could not let Counsel have his way. Yet she was helpless against him. She would break free at all costs. Or die trying. No, no. Noble thrashed against the man's embrace. Noble, I'm here. You're everywhere. Noble answered, elbowing Ender with all her might. Ah! Ender screamed. Only it didn't sound like Ender. It sounded like. Noble's eyes flicked open. She was in a bed. A bed she had never actually gotten to sleep in before. Her bed. The arms wrapped around her were not Ender's but Fort's. As he promised, he had held her all night long to keep her from floating to the ceiling. Which meant, the scream had come from Fort. I'm sorry. Noble squeaked, turning quickly to examine her husband. I'm fine. Fort forced a smile which turned into a wince. I had no idea sleeping next to you would involve violence. Let me see. Noble scrambled to pull up the man's shirt. A bruise was already forming where she had elbowed him. Oh no. I'm not complaining about being undressed, but I promise I'm fine. You may hit like a master when you are awake, but thankfully your punches are much softer when you are asleep. Fort teased. But Noble heard the message behind his words. I punched you. The man touched his jaw. Just a little. Nothing is broken, and you are worth it. Noble's cheeks flamed with embarrassment. Her first night in an actual bed in years and she had attacked the one watching over her. I'm so sorry. She buried her face in her pillow. None of that. Fort clicked his tongue. But if you want to make it up to me, tell me about your dream. Lifting her head onto her elbow, Noble sighed. It wasn't a dream. It was a nightmare. Another one already. Does that make you a saint? Fort winked, resulting in one of the smaller pillows on the bed being flung at his face. A little in nightmare, you meanie. Noble had no interest in becoming a saint. She wasn't even sure how she felt about being a master yet. Who is counsel? Fort's words caught Noble by surprise. Oh no, do I talk in my sleep too? The woman felt like hiding under the covers. You mentioned him, yes. He seems to be the source of your trouble. Fort was often too observant for his own good. His skills were why he kept getting promoted even though he never sought it out. Noble tugged at the sheets to pull them over her head, but Fort stopped her. His eyes pled not to be shut out from what was bothering her. Counsel was one of the main characters in the conflict of my nightmare. He was rather possessive of Brenna, which was the name of the woman whose place I took. Noble watched Fort's face darken. When you say possessive, did he? Noble cut him off. No, though I think if he realized that I wouldn't give in to him sooner then he might have tried. Feeling her husband's emotions surge, Noble stopped. Fort tried to hide his balled fists. He was angry. No, he was more than angry. He was filled with hatred, frustration, and helplessness. Forcing a neutral face, he tried to hide the fury in his eyes. Tell me more. There is not much more to tell. It took me far too long to figure out that his aspect had to do with manipulation. I think the only thing that kept me from fully falling for it was my love for you and the fact that one of my abilities has to do with altering emotions. Noble believed it was mostly her feelings for Fort that helped her fight Counsel's insidious ability. Don't worry, Nickel killed him quite thoroughly. But in your dream just now, he was chasing you again. Fort mentally made a note to thank Nickel with a memory or four. It was just a dream though. My body is unwilling to believe it's all over now. Those feelings will fade. Noble kissed her husband's cheek. Thank you for protecting me while I slept and watching over me. Fort's anger faded a little, replaced by shame. It wasn't enough to keep dreams away. I don't know anything that can chase dreams away. If you find such a device, we will make a fortune. Noble's joke landed flat, and she sighed. You did much more than you realize. Waking up with you to care for me has made all the difference. Ender has no hold on me anymore. Ender. Fort frowned. Like Ender's Deep. That was Counsel's real name, though I didn't know it until the end. I suppose I have a lot to tell you, and some things I would rather not. Noble looked away. She didn't like how strongly her husband had reacted. If she told him some of the things Counsel had said, it wouldn't go well. Fort seemed to catch her meaning. Well, if you don't want to tell me, promise me that you will at least talk to a therapist. I promise. Noble swallowed. While she didn't like the idea of airing out her feelings with a stranger, she needed to remain mentally healthy for herself and her family. And maybe, in time, you will be able to tell me everything. Fort's hopeful glance made Noble smile softly. Then we will both need therapy, she chuckled. I am told couples therapy is great for a marriage. Fort wiggled his eyebrows suggestively. In fact, we could have a therapy session now. Tell me, ma'am, where does it hurt? Noble giggled. That's a different kind of therapy, and anyway I am the one who hurt you, remember? Oh, so you want to be the therapist? Well, doctor. Fort never got to finish his thought. Before he could catch his wife's lips in his, a knock came from the door. Dad, I cannot find my red shoes. Dad, do you know where I put my tracksuit? The twins' voices overlapped each other. Fort held his finger to his lips and pulled the covers over his and his wife's heads. Shish, if we don't answer, maybe they will go away. Dad, we can hear you through the door. Brock said wearily. Are you going to help us or not? Fort winced. Coming. As the man rose from his bed, he silently vowed that next time he would remember to turn on the security system. Noble showered and dressed quickly. It's a new day, she reminded herself, trying to dismiss the terrifying dream from the night before. I'm back with my family. I had forgotten how much Brock and Blaze always need something. I know they called on their father, but I am sure they will be shouting my name as soon as they remember I'm here. I better be ready. But by the time Noble entered the main room, the boys had already found what they were looking for. I took care of it, Fort assured his wife. You just relax. I'll be back as soon as I am dressed. The man kissed his wife before returning to the bedroom and shutting the door. Noble touched her lips with a small smile and turned to her sons. I know your dad told me to relax, but I am here for whatever you need. Ask away. Brock and Blaze exchanged glances. We are good, Mom. We don't need anything right now, Brock answered with a nod. Yeah, Grandma and Dad have it all covered. You don't have to worry about us. Blaze saluted. Noble had hoped to dive right into the mundane tasks of taking care of her family, but they seemed more intent on helping remove her load. It is very thoughtful, but... Shaking her head, Noble accepted the kindness. Very well. I have a little bit of time before I have to go to government headquarters. What would you like to do this morning? Maybe a board game or watch a webtoon. If they wanted her to relax, then that was a good start. Sorry, Mom. Maybe later. No time right now, Blaze said around a bite of banana. That's when Noble noticed that both the twins were dressed in red tracksuits and shoes, ready to head out the door. Leaving already? I thought this was a study day. Noble asked as Brock grabbed a piece of toast from the toaster. Midterms were starting tomorrow, and today was a time for students to get in any tutoring sessions or turn in missing assignments. As her boys were all caught up, Noble thought they would stay home and prepare for their tests. We still have track practice, Brock informed her as he slung a bag on his shoulder. I made Blaze join the team even though he just wants to be the manager. I told him running is good for him. Being manager would have been better, Blaze rolled his eyes. I see. Noble tried to hide her disappointment. It wasn't like they knew she was going to be back today when the school year started. Sure, they could skip practice, but then they might get behind the others. Preparation for events was important. She couldn't ask them to sacrifice their training for her. There will be time for games and shows later, for sure. Have fun, boys. Noble smiled at them. Maybe it is for the best. It will give her more time to see what was going on with. Hey Mom, Rain leaned around her mother to grab a piece of fruit from a bowl. Hey, Rainy, I was thinking, we didn't get a chance to catch up yesterday. I know nothing about what is going on in your life. How about we go to our favorite tea shop? Wait, are you leaving also? Noble watched her daughter grab her jacket. I have a meeting with some classmates to study for midterms. Rain's ears turned slightly red. She looked at her shoes by the door but did not move toward them. I can stay and get tea if you need me to though. You should at least let me get you some proper breakfast, Noble tried. Though Noble suspected there was more going on than just a simple study session, she also didn't want to prevent her daughter from getting good grades. Rain motioned to the fruit in her hand. This is just a snack for later. Grandma already set out some stuff for us to eat earlier. Glancing at the sink, Noble saw 3 empty bowls. Her heart sank. I see. Have a good day. We will talk this evening. Rain clenched her jaw. Yeah, sure. Whatever you say. I love you. Noble forced a smile. The teen put on her second shoe and looked at her mother with a softer expression. Love you too. Bye, Mom. Brock hugged Noble quickly. See ya later. Blaze waved before following his sister out the door. Wait, boys, Fort hurried out of the bedroom. The PTV I ordered isn't here yet. You cannot run all the way to track practice. Fort kissed his wife on the cheek as he passed. I'll be right back. Left alone in the kitchen, Noble sighed. She looked at the unwashed dishes, plugged up the sink, and turned on the water. At least they need me for something, she muttered as she scrubbed the first dish. Oh, sweetheart, we need you for so much, a warm voice came from the direction of Noble's dojo. A gray-haired woman came alongside her to dry the first dripping dish. Noble looked at her incredulously. Do you, Mother? Blaze said you and Fort have it covered. You all seemed pretty self-sufficient this morning. Breakfast was made and eaten, and everyone was dressed and ready to go before I even made it out of my room. I know the kids are getting older, but I didn't expect them to. Noble wasn't sure how to finish the sentence. They hadn't exactly ignored her. They had been polite and friendly. They were maintaining their own schedules without her having to nag them. Minus a few lost things, they were turning into responsible human beings. Wasn't that a goal she had for them since they were little? Did she want them to ask her for every little thing like when they were toddlers? Or was she wanting them to drop everything and throw her a parade? Her children had done exactly what they should and lived their lives. So what was the problem? Suddenly Noble felt ashamed for feeling self-pity. She turned to her mother with a repentant smile. I am sorry. I know I shouldn't complain. In a beautiful azure dress that made her look almost youthful, Lena stood with her arms open. Her blue eyes were sad. I should be the one who is sorry. I thought by making breakfast that I was helping, but instead, I made you think you were replaceable. The older woman embraced her grown daughter in a tight hug. That was all it took for Noble to come undone. She melted into Lena's arms, a soft sob escaping her lips. I know, sweetheart. It's okay to cry, the gray-haired woman patted her on the back. It doesn't feel okay, Noble snapped before taking a deep breath. I don't feel okay. She had dreamed for months about how lovely getting home would be, so why was she crying and feeling sorry for herself? It made no sense. Eat this and then let's go for a walk. Lena handed her daughter a yellow fruit from the bowl and then tugged on her arm. The door opened a moment before they got there. Well, the twins are safely on their way, and I watched Rain head to the train station. What's wrong? Fort hadn't paid his wife much attention when he ran out of the house after the boys. Had she been crying then and he missed it? Nothing some food and some fresh air won't fix. Lena patted Fort on the arm as she led Noble through the door. We'll be back. The fall air felt cool as it brushed against Noble's face. It was already October, and the world seemed to know it. The neighbors' trees were effortlessly dropping their leaves to litter the sidewalk. Yet only Lena's footsteps crunched them into the pavement. Noble floated over without disturbing their resting place. The older woman gave the younger a significant look and motioned toward the fruit in Noble's hand. Though the Noble didn't much feel like eating after crying, she forced some food into her mouth before her mother verbally scolded her. There. Isn't that better? Lena nodded approvingly. You know I won't give you the satisfaction of saying yes. Noble gave her mother a sidelong glance. You don't have to. Your sass says it all. Lena smirked. Noble wiped at her face, letting the wind in the back of her hand dry her tears. They walked along the street in silence while Noble finished her food. The farther they got from the house, the sillier Noble felt about her outburst. She needed to apologize. Mom, I'm sorry. Do you remember when your father died? Lena's question was so far away from Noble's line of thought that it took many seconds for her to comprehend. Yes, she answered at length. I didn't want to believe it at first. I had already almost lost you, and we weren't out of the woods yet. You still had to awaken. I had spent nearly every waking hour worrying about you, so when the news came, I am ashamed to say I had to ask if they were talking about the wrong family member. Lena's voice grew softer as she spoke the admission. In the moment, she had been more willing to deal with her daughter's death than her husband's. It was a choice no one should ever have to make. Mom, you don't have to do this. Noble felt a small amount of panic rise in her. Let me finish. After the initial shock, I mourned for a long time. Eventually, I was able to take that first step forward. Then the next. Each one was easier than the last. I wished desperately for Lance to come back, but I slowly created a new life. I learned to cope. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't be happy to have him back at a moment's notice. His life was taken much too soon. Lena stopped, seemingly wanting to say more. Why are you telling me this? Noble felt a tightness in her chest. Because your family feels the same way about you. Only instead of just wanting you to come back from the dead, you actually did. Unfortunately, we have already gone through part of the mourning process and have unwillingly taken a few steps toward accepting you as gone. Lena wrapped her arm around Noble's shoulders and pulled her close. Feeling more tears prick her eyes, the younger woman laid her head on her mother's shoulder. Lena continued, her voice full of emotion. But here you are. My baby girl is back. The thing we wanted most has happened, and we are overjoyed. Noble's shoulders stiffened. I sense but, coming on. Her mother nodded. We are so happy, but it will take some time for that reality to fully sink in. And just like you will have to learn what being a master will look like for you, we will have to learn what being the family of a master will mean for us. Relaxing slightly, Noble let out a heavy sigh. So you are saying I just need to be patient and stop feeling sorry for myself. You are allowed to feel what you feel. It is what you do with those emotions that counts. Wallowing in self-pity is one thing, but using that feeling of discontent to move forward is healthy. Lena's words hit a nerve. Noble recalled the depression that she fell into when Seb died. While Noble wouldn't have called it self-pity, she had to admit that she had not used her emotions in a healthy way. I'm not sure that I can do that, the floating awakened admitted after a moment. Then it is a good thing you have all of us to walk with you, Lena winced slightly. What I am trying to say is that we are in this together. Though I suppose we will be walking, and you will be, floating. Quote, I know what you mean. Noble chuckled lightly, motioning to her hovering feet. Thus is the life with a flaw-like head in the clouds. Lena patted her daughter's arm. You cannot blame your flaw. You've been that way since you were a child. I always said your mind drifted among the stars. I just didn't mean literally. The two ladies laughed, happy for the break in tension. Noble sighed. I guess I just want things to be the way they were before I left. But that is never going to happen, is it? Shaking her head, Lena hummed softly. No, but with the right amount of work, I think things will be even better. Just you watch. The two ladies hugged. Thank you, Mom. I love you. I am sorry I am such a mess. Fort said I should seek therapy. It seems he was right. Noble breathed in the crisp air, fully appreciating it for the first time since they set out. He is absolutely right. I am always a call away, but I cannot replace a licensed professional. Lena narrowed her gaze. I know. Noble held up her hands. I'll get a counselor. Good. Lena's normal smile returned. They walked for a few minutes in silent camaraderie. Noble pursed her lips, mulling over something her mother had said in her grand speech. When you mentioned Dad, you said his life had been taken from him too soon. What did you mean? What happened to him was an accident, wasn't it? Lena sniffed. I just used a figure of speech. Don't mind me, Mom. Noble stopped her mother. You know I can feel your emotions. Lena's lips parted in a small smile. What is it that Gwei calls you? An emotional lie detector. So don't lie. Noble thought the request was simple enough. Yet the mother remained silent, studying her daughter. You're not ready to hear this today. But Noble would not let it go. Tell me anyway. At last, Lena grunted. Very well. But this information cannot go anywhere, not even to Fort. They both looked around. No one was on the street. It was unlikely they would be overheard. You have my attention. Tell me. Noble did not confirm or deny whether she would tell her husband. The lack of promise was not lost on Lena, but she decided to proceed. The official reports say that what happened was an accident. That the building collapsed from faulty construction. But what the reports don't say is that your father was meeting with one of the great clans to discuss something he found concerning. I believe that he was silenced. Who was he meeting with? From which clan? What was it that Dad found concerning? Noble felt the questions pour out of her. If her mother was trying to distract her from her own problems, this was the way to do it. Though Noble knew that Lena was not lying. The former director's wife believed this to be true. I am not sure about any of those answers, the older woman looked away. But at the end of the day, it isn't something we can pursue anyway. We have too many loved ones to protect that are still living to worry about the one that is gone. Lena's words were a sobering reminder that even a master could not protect everyone. I see, Noble chewed her lip. Thank you for telling me. She wasn't sure what else there was to say. It was yet another thing she would need to process. In the back of her mind, she had always suspected foul play because her father had been so far away from his office in the restaurant that collapsed. Lena had simply confirmed her suspicion. Noble's head spun. I really do need therapy. Noble looked down at her communicator. Therapy would have to wait for another day. Right now she was due for a date with the government. As soon as the ladies reached the house, Fort hurried out the door to meet them at the street. He must have been anxiously awaiting their return. Lena nodded subtly at him and his shoulders relaxed. I am here to escort you to your appointment. Are you ready? He asked Noble. I should grab my bag and maybe a bite of toast, and then I am good to go. But you don't have to come with me if you don't want to. Noble didn't want to be a burden. I was given the day off to take care of you, Ford insisted, slightly offended that his wife thought he might stay home. You're just worried about the meltdown I had earlier, Noble cut her eyes at him. Can't a man just want to go with his wife to make sure she is all right and not crying somewhere? Ford blurted before thinking the better of it. He most certainly may. Noble held out her hand. And with you there, I am sure that I will not shed a single tear. Lena coughed lightly. Let me get that person toast. Then I'm going to go pack up my things. I'll be all moved out by tonight. You don't have to leave so soon. Noble clamped her mouth shut after her mother's withering gaze. You want to be needed. Lena shot back. Then her face cracked a small smile. As soon as I leave, trust me, they will need you plenty. She's right, Ford agreed, not the least bit offended by the implication. He smiled warmly at Lena. You got us through the hard time. Thanks for all your help. Lena hugged her son-in-law. We got our girl back. Apparently, she wants to be put to work. If I had been through what she has, I would want to rest for a month. But to each their own. I'll get those things so you can be on your way. Thanks, Mom. Noble sent a feeling of warmth toward her mother which was graciously received. Anything for you, sweetheart. Lena slipped into the house and brought back the requested items. Soon the couple was on their way. On the train ride, Noble watched the scenery of the city pass quietly by the window. The silence allowed her to reflect more thoroughly on what her mother had said that morning, particularly about her father's death. Mom believed what she said or the woman would never have hinted at a government cover-up. Lena had even gone back and worked for the government after Lance died. If they did cover up what had really happened, then Lena must not have held them responsible for the former director's death. So who is? The answer was obvious. The great clans. They had enough power and influence to make any problem disappear. Even if that problem were a person. If one of them was responsible as Lena suspected, they were lucky to have a body to bury it all. Noble sighed. Even if what Mother said is true, what can I do? It happened nearly 2 decades ago. So much had happened since then. Would opening this Pandora's box bring anything but heartache and possibly more death? What are you thinking about? Ford interrupted her musings. And don't say nothing. You are never thinking about nothing. Staring out the window, Noble contemplated what to tell him. The train that they were on was just like the one she had thrown at the gate guardian not so long ago. Dozens of people were in earshot. Noble could make up something, but Ford was too perceptive. He knew her games too well by now. She pursed her lips. If, hypothetically, someone died a long time ago and you suspect their death might not have been an accident, would you pursue justice or let the matter rest? Ford looked at her strangely. Does this come from a not-so-hypothetical source or are you just doing one of those thought experiments to keep your mind busy? Does answering that question affect the outcome of your response? Noble tilted her head as she turned to look at him. Ford sighed. Her non-answer was all the answer he needed. But he wanted to keep her happy and her mind active, so he didn't press further. At least for now. I would need more information. If the death is ancient history, then looking through the evidence would do no harm but also not have any real reward except the satisfaction of a job well done. The man tapped his chin. Noble kept a straight face, wondering whether to let the matter drop or if she should prod him for more advice. Thankfully he continued without her encouragement. On the other hand, if justice can be sought and a perpetrator brought to account for his actions, that would be a worthy goal. In this hypothetical situation, would this be true? Ford studied his wife's face. Noble chewed her lip for a moment. I'm not sure. Probably not. Assassins could live very short lives, so the culprit could very well be dead. And even if they were alive, the great clan who sent them would shield them. Ford furrowed his brow. Is pursuing the goal of justice going to get the one doing it into trouble? Most likely. That one was easy to answer. Uncovering a government cover-up would make her husband's employer look bad at best and have a great clan ready to murder her and her family at worst. The director stroked his chin. Then, if it was long ago as you said, it may be better to let it rest. I would consider if the hypothetical person would want me to get myself in trouble for their sake when the chance of success seems so small. Noble frowned. Lance would want the truth to come out, but he valued the lives of his family much more than his own. You are probably right, Noble sighed. This person would not want anyone else to get hurt, hypothetically. Relief washed across Fort's face. That's good, hypothetically. Fort's communicator buzzed. He looked at it and smiled. What? Noble found his sudden shift in mood. Fort tucked his device back in his pocket. Your interviewer is quite eager for you to arrive. Noble raised her eyebrows. You know who is going to interview me. The director chuckled softly. I do. She volunteered, and I thought you might like to have a friendly face. I hope that is all right. It's fine, Noble pouted. What's wrong? Fort took his wife's hand. She sighed dramatically. It just won't be the same without the handsome man who interviewed me before, but I suppose he is too good for that now. If you want him and only him, I will be happy to arrange that. Fort reached for his pocket. No, I would rather have you by my side than interrogating me. But I am glad to know you are willing. Noble blushed. She was actually very thankful her interviewer wouldn't be a stranger. Hopefully, that meant things would go more smoothly. Just know you don't have to answer anything you don't want to. And if you need me to leave the room, just say the word and I'll disappear. Fort looked lovingly into his wife's eyes. He still remembered the scared girl who came out of her first nightmare. He had started to fall for her then, though it took much longer for those feelings to develop into words. He wanted nothing more than for her to be safe and comfortable all of her days. Thank you, for everything. Noble pecked her husband on the lips before the train came to a stop. I do like being thanked, Fort smiled mischievously. Noble's ears burned, and she quickly changed the subject. Is there anything else I need to know before I go into this? The director coughed lightly. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. When you speak to the interviewer, the two people who went into the nightmare with you are Master Sarai and Master Celio. Master Celio. The floating woman quirked an eyebrow. Fort held out his hand, and after a moment, Noble gave him one half of the other's voice to place behind his ear. Master Celio is one of Nickel's aliases. Any work he has done for us has been attributed to that name, so it cannot be traced back to him. It was yet another government secret. At least this one was to keep someone she cared about alive. That was a secret that she could get behind. Noted, I will be mindful. As they got off the platform, the two took on a professional air. They looked out at the government compound towering above them in the street. But when Noble moved toward the front gate, Fort pulled her aside. I'm not in the mood for one of Praised's cryptic greetings today, are you? The officer had an uncanny knack for making others get ominous premonitions. Using his credentials, Fort took his wife through a secret side entrance and then to the room for her interview. Waiting there was an even more unexpected greeting. You. Two arms flew around Noble and squeezed her tightly. I'm so glad you are not dead. Noble had sensed Teddy's emotional signature before entering the office, but she had not anticipated the mad dash the woman would take when she entered the room. It was sweet, if a little unnerving, coupled with the words. Noble hugged the younger woman. Dying was not an option as far as I'm concerned. Teddy pushed her glasses up her nose. It's always an option, but I'm still happy you didn't choose it, Mom, ma'am. Fort's secretary often had to correct herself. Though Noble had never asked, she suspected that Teddy called her and Fort, Mom, and Dad, in her head. If it made Teddy happy, Noble didn't mind. I can't believe that I never connected that you were Queen Bee. It all makes sense in hindsight, of course. But it blew my mind when I realized. Teddy mimicked her mind exploding with a flourish. Noble paled slightly. How many people know my secret already? She asked Fort. She figured it out on her own when you disappeared. And since I needed her help to get the ball rolling for a rescue effort, I confirmed her suspicions. Teddy tucked her long hair behind her ear. You are a real-life superhero with an alter ego and everything. If I ever make a comic, can I use your life story? We can cross that bridge some other time. Noble hedged. I believe I am here for an interview. The younger woman nodded. Oh right, we should get going. I'm almost ready. Wait, are you my interviewer? The floating awakened realized there were only 3 chairs and no one else in the small office. Yep. Teddy's eyes turned sad. Is that a problem? Not at all, I just didn't know you were qualified for that. Noble felt bad for hurting the girl's feelings. Oh, I did that back before I became a personal assistant. I interviewed a large portion of the Forgotten Shore survivors, even. I guess you could say I am a qualified professional. Noble glanced at Fort, who nodded. She is certified to do these interviews. So, what do you say? Teddy pushed up her glasses with a smile. Noble pursed her lips. If Teddy had spoken with the survivors of that horrific battle, then her story would seem tame by comparison. I am ready to begin when you are. One moment. Teddy relaxed her face and straightened her back. She sat down behind the desk and made a sweeping motion for them to join her on the other side. Teddy glanced at the datapad and opened it to the appropriate screen. Clearing her throat, the interviewer began. Good morning. I am Teddy, and I will be your interviewer today, ascended Noble. The difference in the young woman's demeanor was so startling that Noble had a little difficulty believing it was the same person. Teddy continued with her speech, unimpeded. Director Fort is only here as an invited observer. He is advised not to answer for you or lead you in your answers. If he has any additional questions, he may ask at the conclusion of our time. Fort, of course, already knew this. He gave a slight nod. Teddy clicked on the datapad. Excellent. I will be asking you a series of questions about your time in the nightmare. The purpose of the briefing is to enrich our knowledge base as well as let us know any ways we can assist you. What you tell us may help future spell carriers as well as humanity as a whole. Of course, you don't have to answer anything you don't want to. Now, ascended Noble. Just call me Noble like you always have, the new master interrupted. Please, Teddy, you are very good at sounding like a competent interviewer, but I prefer the casual tone that usually exists between us. The younger woman heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed her shoulders into a more natural slump. Thank the dead gods. Being professional is exhausting. Teddy loosened her collar and smiled genuinely. Her fingers hovered over a keyboard linked to her datapad. Please tell me about your nightmare. And don't mind my typing. I promise to only write flattering things. Checking her screen, Teddy nodded. First, do you know when or where your nightmare took place? Noble folded her hands. It took place in the kingdom of Crestfall at least 1,000 years after the Jade Queen inhabited Ravenheart. Teddy's fingers moved at lightning speed. That coincides with what Master Sarai said in her interview yesterday. Had they spoken to her before she left the Academy Hospital? Most interviews happened there for the convenience of dreamers and new awakened. Noble's briefing at government headquarters was an anomaly. And were there any special circumstances around your entry into the seed? More than I can count. The professor pushed aside the extra thoughts and focused on the task at hand. Retelling her experience. Yes. I was fighting a gate guardian when I accidentally fell through the gate with a weird memory I had at the time called the portcullis key. That memory also pulled me directly into a nightmare without any search for the seed. It was a strange little ball. Teddy tilted her head to one side. Yes, I was forced to leave the portcullis key behind in the nightmare in order to complete the trial, Noble explained. The spell stole your memory. Bummer. That would have been cool to study. Teddy rocked back in her chair, lamenting the fact the seat didn't spin. The spell is a thief. She mumbled as she typed. Got it. Please proceed. Taking a deep breath, Noble launched into her tale. She gave all of the details about Council, Amira, and the world they lived in. While she had been reluctant to give a full retelling when looking directly into Fort's eyes, telling it to Teddy was strangely easy. Noble used the interviewer's natural excitement to get her past the harder parts. The professor could feel all of Fort's emotional reactions as well as the occasional squeeze of her hand, but he was wise enough to mostly stay silent. The only time he had an outburst was when he heard that Council orchestrated a rebellion in Noble's name. That Claude for brains was trying to get you killed, so he had a martyr. Fort balled his fist so tightly that Noble thought his palms might bleed. Noble sent a calming feeling to her husband, which he reluctantly accepted. Sadly, she could not refute his claims since she also suspected that Brenna had died during the altercation with the Queen. That would have been just the push Ender needed to get the rest of the population behind him in a final coup. Was Council tall? Teddy asked, pulling Fort from his anger and Noble from her attempt to calm him. And was this Amira taller or shorter than him? And what color was your dress when you had to fight her? Is that relevant to your report? Noble pursed her lips in confusion. No, I just want to get a mental picture. Teddy brushed back her long hair as she awaited the answer. Noble scratched her nose. Council was tall, but Amira was even taller. My dress was blue. The shorty with a Napoleon complex caused the azure-clad beauty to challenge the Amazonian psychopath, Teddy mumbled as she made a note on her datapad. Noble coughed. Are you really going to include all that in the official report? What? No. I'll make it all nice later. This is just for funsies, you know. Please continue. Teddy urged before her eyes went wide. Wait, I think I know what happens next. Is this the point when the two other challengers entered the nightmare with you? Almost. Noble couldn't help but smile at her interviewer. But I did have to battle the Queen once first. Amira nearly fried me to a crisp. If not for Kosi, I probably wouldn't have survived. Sounds exciting. Teddy mused. It was horrific. Noble shook her head. But a good kind of horrific, right? Teddy's sincere question made the professor's jaw drop. I don't think I've ever heard good and horrific used together, no. Noble rubbed the back of her neck. But to answer your earlier question, it was the morning after Kosi saved me and I was sent to the dungeon that Sarai and Celio showed up. One corner of Teddy's mouth turned upward. She leaned forward in her seat. Master Celio, please, tell me everything. Tell you everything, about Master Celio. Noble shot a glance at Fort. The professor could feel how keenly interested the younger woman had become at the mention of Nickel's alias. What was up with that? Fort had warned Noble off of mentioning Nickel in front of the kids at all. So the professor was already wary of giving out any personal information on the librarian. Fort picked up on her reticence immediately. Teddy, the director started, we are only here to talk about Noble's experience in the nightmare. Teddy folded her hands in front of her. Don't worry, boss. I'm not trying to find out any top secret information. I just want to know what kind of fighter Master Celio is. Rumor has it that he is the most vicious killer in the government after Soul Reaper. Tell me, did you see him do anything particularly heinous? Well, Noble thought for a second. He did chain two fallen abominations together and barbecue them with lightning. That's epic. Teddy's eyes glistened. I also saw him stab a man in the heart and allow the body to be eaten by a terror, Noble added thoughtfully. That's savage. The man is even cooler than I thought. I don't suppose you could get an autograph for me. The interviewer pressed her lips together hopefully. I'm not sure when I will, Noble's communicator buzzed. Noble, meet in the dream realm in 2 hours. The message was anonymous, but there was no doubt who it was from. You know what, Teddy? I will try to get you that autograph really soon. Sweet. Thanks, ma'am. Teddy dipped her head. You are welcome. Noble checked her communicator again. Sarai sent a message that she would be in the dream realm soon as well. I guess it is time for a reunion. Noble cleared her throat lightly. I'm afraid I just realized I am in a bit of a time crunch. We need to keep things moving. With measured precision, Noble presented the rest of the nightmare in as much detail as possible. Teddy was particularly interested in each of the nightmare creatures, their strengths and weaknesses. Noble would publish all of the information in papers later, but that didn't stop the interviewer from asking every question that popped into her mind. At last, the story was complete. Making her final notes, Teddy sighed. I'm a little jealous, she admitted. What I wouldn't give to be able to slice a creature in two with a magical sword. It sounds epic. Noble had no response to that. Will there be anything else? The interviewer read from her screen. Is there anything else you want to tell the government? Any aspect, abilities or attributes that you would like to report? Not at this time, though I am sure the government will find out my ability through their own means soon enough. Noble rolled her eyes. I suppose I should report that I did get a true name. Teddy's fingers stopped typing. You have a true name. Boss, I'm friends with someone who has a true name. Fort chuckled. I know. I'm married to her. Come on, tell us the name. Teddy tipped her chair so far forward that Noble feared she might pin herself to the desk. I'm sure the spell gave you something amazing like Goddess of Comfort. Noble held up a single finger. You got one of the words right. It is Child of Promise. Spell could have at least promoted you to Mother since you are one. Teddy typed all the information into her datapad. Still, that is impressive. Well done. Teddy finished her notes and closed her datapad. I think that will be all. Thank you so much for your time, Ascended Child of Promise. Hearing the true name stirred something deep inside Noble, causing the hair on her arms to stand on end. Would that happen every time someone said it? Probably not. But there was something deeply satisfying about being called by it with such reverence. Noble smiled. Thank you, Teddy. I am very glad you volunteered for this assignment. The pleasure is all mine. Teddy beamed. It was one of the best days ever. Such a sweet, slightly odd, young woman. Noble wished nothing but the best for Fort's personal assistant. Teddy had been nothing but kind and welcoming since the day they met. People like her were worth defending. When Noble shook the interviewer's hand, she felt something change within her. Quickly pulling up her runes, Noble noticed the Kingdom Keeper attribute shimmer almost imperceptibly. Those around you are safer while they are under your care. Huh. Noble did care for Teddy. Did that mean she was safer right now just because Noble was with her, or would she somehow remain safer once leaving Noble's presence? The professor had assumed that the care mentioned meant caretaking, but like her aspect it seemed that it had to do with actual feeling instead. Interesting. Teddy didn't seem to notice any change, which was also a relief to Noble. Her attribute was passive and she couldn't help who she cared about. It would be awkward if people noted a change when she did and did not feel kindness toward them. Fort stood and offered his hand to his wife. I have to go by my office to check on a few things and let people know I won't be back until next week. Then we can head home. You go on ahead. I will wait for Teddy to finish packing up and walk back with her. I don't want to be peeking over your shoulder impatiently. Noble laughed. She knew as well as anything that, check on a few things meant at least a little work. Fort nodded at her assessment before stealing a kiss. I'll see you in a few. When the door shut, Teddy clicked her tongue. Honestly, I didn't want to complain in front of the boss, but these chairs are horrible. I knew I should have taken mine down the elevator to this floor. Well, I'm glad this wasn't a long-term assignment then, Noble chuckled. It was worth it. I got to hear about the elusive Master Celio. People gossip about him in hushed tones, and you actually met him. I have heard all the rumors, but there is one I want confirmed. Since you are secretly Queen Bee, you are the most likely to know. Is Celio also Lord Mongrel from the Dreamscape? What? No. Noble answered reflexively. I mean, I don't think so. At least their fighting styles are very different. I see. Teddy seemed disappointed. That would have been pretty cool. It would indeed, the professor agreed. His identity will just have to remain a government secret, I guess. The younger woman tucked the datapad under her arm. I have access to all sorts of files, but that guys, or girls. Teddy cut her eyes at Noble to gauge a reaction but was disappointed. Their records are all locked up tight. Sometimes we want to know things we shouldn't. Noble said as much to herself as the other woman. But that doesn't stop us from trying. She pursed her lips. Teddy. Yes, Master Noble. Noble helped the woman pack up the keyboard and reset the room. This may be too much to ask, but can I trouble you for a copy of an old report? Anything for Queen Bee. Tell me what you need, and I will send it right over. Noble paused, looking toward the door. Fort would hurry back if he thought she was in trouble. They would need to head to his office sooner rather than later. It's now or never. Noble sighed. I need a copy of an accident report. Specifically, the one that caused Director Lance's death. Rushing home from headquarters, Noble barely had time to make it before her appointment in the dream realm. As a master, she could leave from anywhere in the waking world. But Noble was hesitant to try it for the first time. If that were not enough incentive, she needed to place her tether where she wanted to return, otherwise the professor would end up back at the site of the closed gate. If she had to guess, the massive walls encircling the gate were already being torn down to make way for other construction. Space in the NQSC was more scarce every day, and people would jump at the chance to regain even a little bit of it. Either way, Noble didn't want to appear again at that point. She much preferred to come back where she always had, to the safety of her dojo. Entering the small room, Noble felt a wave of nostalgia. She had honed her skills in this dojo after having the twins. It felt like a lifetime ago. As Queen Bee, she had practiced with Sarai here before they debuted in the Dreamscape. After all that she had been through with the red-headed baker, Noble could not imagine life without her friend. Finally, she had trained Rain in this room. The lessons had been rewarding for both of them. Perhaps Rainy would consider sparring with me again so I can see how much she has grown. Noble felt a small pang at how distant Rain had been since their reunion. Maybe a little close-quarter combat would help them reconnect. Not everything in the dojo was as Noble had left it. Her pod was pushed into one corner. That was fine, she wouldn't need it anymore anyway. Where it had been a mundane cot was set up instead. This is where Lena had been sleeping while staying at the family's house. The grandmother had not once complained about the situation, happily stepping in to fill the gap. Now the bed was stripped of its sheets and all other signs of Noble's mother were gone. She had moved back to her own home, to resume her own life. I owe her more than I can ever repay. Abandoning that thought, Noble returned to the task at hand, heading to her new anchor in the dream realm. Summoning a set of armor to cover herself, Noble prepared to depart. With a deep breath, she focused on tethering herself to her dojo. It came more naturally than she expected. All it took was a conscious effort and her anchor in the waking world was attached to a new spot. Interesting. Noble wondered if there was anything else she was missing before leaving. She tried to think. As far as she knew, everything was in order. The academy offers a course for new masters. Perhaps I should consider taking it. She mused with a smile. But not now. Right now, she was already running late. Again. Thankfully her destination was barely a thought away. Noble focused on the anchor she had just made and then the tether connecting her to the dream realm. Suddenly she was no longer in her dojo. She was. Where was she? Looking around, Noble found herself next to a large shimmering gate. It was mesmerizing. If not for her strange entrance into the nightmare, this is where she would have found the seed to begin that strange journey. All around her, gray stone walls rose quickly to a vaulted ceiling. Looking up at a beautiful stained glass window above two imposing doors, Noble knew exactly where she had been relocated. The palace. Noble had spent hours staring at the colored glass over the past many weeks. It was exactly as she remembered. Only one piece was missing, the one she had taken and put in her room. But how? How indeed? A feminine voice echoed. I thought you said this was all rubble. Sarai appeared beside her suddenly, seeming to materialize from thin air. Which, technically she had. The young woman hugged her friend before looking around with similar wonder. The whole building is intact and looking better than when we left it. Noble nodded. It was very strange. I guess the spell put it back together. I wonder if the whole kingdom is like this. No. Just the building and not even all of it. All of the passages that led underground are either blocked off by stone walls or missing entirely. Nickel's voice echoed in the large hall, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Noble flinched. She hadn't sensed him coming at all. Laundry. Sarai's face brightened as the man in question strode in from the far side of the hall. The friendly redhead ran forward and gathered the librarian in a crushing hug. You were gone before I could leave my room at the Academy Hospital and no one would tell me where you were. I was worried something might have happened. I made sure to slip out of the Academy before anyone was even aware that I ascended. Nickel cut his eyes toward Noble with a smirk. Unlike some people who crash through gates to seek attention, I prefer a more subtle approach. Subtle? My foot. Noble arched her brow. You just didn't want to do your interview. Sarai nodded, wrinkling her nose. Yeah, you left us to stumble over who Mr. Celio was and why he was in the nightmare with us. It's just an alias. We all have them. You told of my exploits, then. I hope you did me justice. The librarian brushed back imaginary long hair. I might have done too good a job, Noble hummed, drawing a glare from her black-clad companion. I now have to get Master Celio's autograph. There are worse things, Nickel shrugged, but Noble could feel his satisfaction that he had made a good impression. I will send you something to keep you out of trouble. Very generous of you, Noble smirked. Then she thought of how thrilled Teddy would be. Thank you, she added more genuinely. Noble and I just arrived. Sarai looked at the third member of their group. Have you been waiting long? Not long, Nickel chuckled. I have only been here more or less since yesterday. Other than letting Ren know I'm not dead and messaging the two of you, I've been exploring to see if there is anything worth finding. By the disappointment in your voice, I'm guessing the treasury is empty. One corner of Noble's lips tilted upward. Everything is empty, Nickel corrected her. Not a piece of furniture or decoration in sight. I guess the spell didn't feel the need to fill in the details. Noble shrugged. The fact the building was here at all was bizarre enough without all the extras. If it had just rebuilt what was still there, then it would make sense why only the stone and glass were present. Everything else would have rotted away with time. Nickel led them through all of the most notable rooms. Sarai got to see the Great Hall in all its glory for the first time. The original Amira had melted the stone with her fury. It would be wonderful for a party. She clasped her hands. I agree. Can't you imagine all the magnificent dances that took place right here? Noble pictured an orchestra in the corner and a table of food along one wall. But before she could conjure up an image of her husband in all his finery, the third member of the group cleared his throat. I don't know about you, but I didn't come here to dance. Shall we get down to business? Meeting time, Sarai chirped excitedly. Just like old times. If by old times you mean the day before yesterday, then sure, Nickel shot her a complicated look. I want to know what we got from the nightmare. The librarian stretched as he spoke. Noble guessed he hadn't slept since returning, and as far as she knew he hadn't slept for days before the nightmare ended either. His body had to be exhausted, but he was putting off getting some shut-eye. Perhaps he was worried about having his first real dream in years. Her own had been horrific. Or maybe he was too eager to find out all of the dream realm's secrets to have time for something as mundane as rest. I think you might need a nap, Noble pointed out in a motherly tone. I'll sleep when I'm dead, Nickel brushed aside the comment, stifling a yawn. I'm fine. Ready for a fight even. Oh, Sarai smiled innocently. Barely a day since our last battle and you're already ready to jump back into action. Of course. A master should always be prepared to fight. Nickel raised one eyebrow. All right, let's do it. Sarai clapped her hands, her eyes glittering. The other two looked at her, a little stunned. Do what? Noble asked carefully. Was the woman wanting to go out to start slaying nightmare creatures already? Had the sweet baker gone insane? Fortunately, the younger woman clarified quickly. Let's have a friendly battle. We can see what each other can do. We could obviously just tell each other what our new abilities are, but wouldn't it be more exciting to show them off? Sarai's enthusiasm was infectious, but Noble hesitated. The last time she had fought in the Grand Hall had ended in disaster. Amira had nearly killed her and only Kosi's intervention had allowed her to survive. The floating master pursed her lips. This is different. It is a spar with friends. There is no fear of death. Anyway, the room in the nightmare and this one are technically not the same place. A small smile formed on Noble's face as she shrugged lightly. Why not? I wanted to see what my ability can do under pressure. And it will be fun to try to puzzle out what you can do as well. The two women turned to Nickel. The librarian crossed his arms. Fine. I suppose anything is better than a dance. You can't fool me. I can feel your excitement. Noble narrowed her gaze. I don't know what you are talking about. Nick's eyes darted away. Let's get this over with. Not exactly what you want to hear at the beginning of a duel, Noble chuckled. I hope you won't surrender too easily. I know you are just trying to play on my vanity, Nickel arched his brow. It's working. A moment later, Great AXE appeared from Sparks. Noble found some amusement in its unusual size but had no doubt that the man wielding it would do it with skill. One of your new toys. Noble tilted her head. She had never seen it before. The King's Defender. The man in black gave a short nod. What are you bringing to the table? The two ladies eagerly complied. While Noble summoned the Zenith, Sarai brought out a polearm that neither of the others recognized. The elegant atgere was long and thin with a golden point at the end. In addition to the armor-piercing spike, a slender axe blade protruded from one side of the far end, making it extra deadly. I call her Amber, Sarai said. She works similar to my sweet aching Ember. Ember and Amber. Cute. Noble liked the nickname. She would have to find out more about all of the new weapons later. She looked down at her Ziphos. I lost the unlikely end. This is Zenith. Her companions said nothing, soaking in the gravity of her words. The ESCTOC had been Queen Bee's signature since her foray into the Dreamscape. It was a great loss. They allowed a small moment of silence. Then, with the weapons selected, the three looked around the great hall. It was a lot larger than the long, missing arena that once lay below the palace. Noble wondered for a moment if they might be able to excavate to find it. It wouldn't do much good without the magic to fuel it though. So the hall was as good of a venue to battle as any. Try not to damage the walls. I would hate for this place to come down on our heads before it's even 2 days old. Noble looked at her friends. Wait, if we are making ground rules, I'm adding some. Nickel narrowed his gaze. No using any of your powers except your new one. Does that go for me also? Sarai pouted a little. Clicking his tongue, the man in black looked at her. You especially. I may be hungry, but I don't want my goose to be cooked. None of us will use anything except our newest ability. Noble agreed for them. This was a golden opportunity. It would give them a chance to try out their strength as masters and also tinker with their new skills. Plus it sounded like more fun. If they had been in the Dreamscape, this exhibition would have drawn the largest crowd of viewers since the face-off between QueenBee and Mongrel. Knowing how much a battle like this would have been promoted, Ford would have likely finally gotten the bobblehead he so desired. Instead, there were no observers on the balcony overhead. Only the ghosts of kings and queens of old might be able to peek in on the epic display. Despite the lack of viewership, the three combatants were more excited than they had ever been in an official battle. The three formed a triangle in the center of the room. A baker, a teacher, and a librarian, who would have thought they were three of the most prominent duelists in the Dreamscape before ascending. And now they were three of humanity's newest masters. It was a strange thought. But everything about the spell was strange. Noble would just have to get used to it. You heard Queen Bee. No friendly fire, fire. Nickel eyed the baker carefully. The redhead laughed. You don't have to worry about me. I will stay cool as a cucumber. Good. I can personally attest to how bad the place looks all messed up and melted. Noble hid her wince behind a mask of sarcasm. They all summoned their additional pieces of armor including helmets. The extra protection did not look as impressive or sleek as their usual Dreamscape attire, but it was much more functional. The cohort had seen each other bloodied from battle. There was no need to keep up appearances. Being safe was more important than looking impressive. Nickel glanced out from a slit in his dark mask. Are you ready? He asked casually with his enormous blade resting on the ground. Yes. Sarai tapped Amber lightly on the ground in assent. If I say no, will that change anything? Noble smirked. She spun her Ziphos around in an arc before bringing it to her natural stance. Just like that, the stage was set. The trio stared at one another as if suspended in time. Then all at once, an explosion of energy rocked the hall. Sarai and Nickel lunged forward with incredible speed. The combined power of the two masters would have ended any awakened and overwhelmed most masters. But Noble was not most masters. A smile crept onto her face as she darted away. You didn't count or say go, she chided. All's fair in war. Sarai moved the polearm mercilessly toward her friend's pauldron. Effortlessly, Noble rolled her shoulder to save it from the piercing blow. The zenith caught the light from the high windows as a hint of green ran the length of the Xiphos's leaf-shaped blade. Ah! Barely able to pull the weapon into place to block Nickel's bone-splitting great axe, Noble noted how the front-weighted weapon inhibited her usual rhythm. Once again, the zenith needed to be adjusted. She ducked backward, allowing her two opponents to let the dueling axe blades to collide. A spray of sparks skittered across the floor from the hit, but Noble was too distracted to notice. Gripping the pommel tightly, Noble focused on the zenith. Using her new ability, she altered the weight of the blade to complement her smaller frame. It was even easier than the first time she had done it because she did not need to experiment to find the right distribution. The sword was instantly balanced. Perfect. The distance that Noble had created between herself and her opponents was closed in an instant as the two forces of nature descended like a storm. The zenith moved with precision to block Amber, deflecting both Sarai and her weapon. Simultaneously, Noble stepped into Nickel's attack, countering with one of her own to avoid the king's defender. Noble's clarity seemed to have grown exponentially with the merging of her body and soul. Even though both of her opponents were moving at blinding speed, she had no trouble discerning their motions and intent. Nickel had put a vast amount of force behind his swing. Was his new ability somehow related to strength? Thankfully, Noble had deftly kept the axe from cleaving her helmet. Instead of coming down on her head, King's defender crashed into the floor with a resounding clang. A small nick appeared in the stone ground, but the room was otherwise unfazed. When the spell rebuilds something, it builds it to last. Nickel did not stop to note the mark he left on the floor. He was already hoisting the axe for another chance to cleave Noble in two. No murder, Noble cried, but her voice was playful. The zenith was more than capable of absorbing the blow. The steel of the two blades slid across each other before disengaging in opposite directions. Both battle experts used the momentum to reverse their swings. The other edge of both weapons clashed, sending a shockwave through the room. The collision would have shattered the bones of a mundane human, but the masters easily withstood the catastrophic interchange. They not only withstood it, they used the energy to attack with even greater force. Noble hovered slightly higher, careful not to let her feet touch the marble. The professor did not want to lose this match on a silly technicality like her flaw getting in the way. And since she wasn't using any of her abilities, the small addition to her height was not cheating either. If anything, it brought more fairness to the match because she came closer to the heights of her companions. Nickel also made sure not to brush the ground again, with his great axe. That was good. Noble suspected the next mark would be more than just a small divot. Sensing Sarai to her left, Noble used the residual motion from her assault to force Nickel forward. The redhead passed behind them, her polearm grazing the back of Noble's armor as it went. The thin blade etched a line across the pristine metal, leaving a warning with it. Even without any fire to augment it, Sarai's amber was a dangerous weapon. Noble didn't want to discover what it would do to her ascended skin. Impressive. Noble nodded. That thing will be unstoppable with your aspect added to it. You think? Sarai dodged the zenith, rolling away. I got it from killing the tyrant. Noble had also gotten credit for the kill of the Lord of the Mountain, but she had not gotten a memory. Noble wasn't upset. Sarai had done the heavy lifting on that kill. How could she not be happy for her friend? That's wonderful. You deserve it. Noble nodded before quirking an eyebrow. Does your new ability have to do with agility? Sarai laughed musically. Guess again. I will as soon as I collect more data. Noble lunged at her two opponents. She struck experimentally at the feet, legs, and torsos of the others, using various movements and techniques to test out what would work best with the zenith. Each move gave her more information on her capabilities as well as the benefits and limits of her new blade. The Xiphos moved even better than expected. The air parted before it like it was afraid of being sliced in two under its mighty power. With each stroke, Noble's grip became more familiar with the intricacies of the pommel. Was it her imagination, or was the weapon slowly accommodating the grooves of her fingers? The small adjustment in the balance by altering the weight made all the difference in the way it handled. It still had all of the punch without causing Noble to compensate for its reach. It's not unlikely end, but it is still a beauty. Noble admired her new toy as it raced toward Sarai's cuirass. The redhead spun out of the way while tilting the shaft of her polearm to intercept the sword's blade. The zenith ran along its length, leaving a scratch in its path. Sarai's eyes opened wider as the pommel came close to her face. She simultaneously leaned her head back and put the full force of her body into pushing the staff into Noble's chest. The two women separated. The zenith is powerful and beautiful. Sarai commented with a small smile, just like the owner. Thanks. Noble smiled. Seems we have all come out with winning weapons. Nick's axe could take down most creatures without ever losing momentum. Both women ducked as the weapon in question sliced through the air overhead. I agree. Such fine craftsmanship. Sarai didn't even seem bothered by how close she had come to getting a haircut. Shaking his head, Nickel rolled his eyes. What is with the running commentary? Are we chatting or fighting? Both. The ladies answered in unison, their brows furrowed in confusion. Why would Nickel make them choose? In the small respite, Noble took a deep breath. The first part of Noble's experiment was a resounding success. Her weapon would stay weighted the way she wanted without her having to focus on it. It seemed that unless she released the object from her command, or ran completely out of essence, the change would remain. That was good. She filed the information away to analyze in more depth when things were through. Now for the next phase of discovery. A smile bloomed on Noble's face. The fun was just beginning. The second part of Noble's experiment involved testing what her new ability could do in battle. The most recent nightmare had reinforced what Noble already knew. Survival in the dream realm meant learning how to use every ability to its fullest. She had mostly neglected using her levitation in battle before arriving in Crestfall, and she did not want to make the same mistake with her second gravity-defying ability. Now that she knew the zenith would remain stable in battle, she could move her attention to altering other objects. Let's see what I can do. Nickel clashed with Sarai first, trying to knock the agile baker off her feet. The moment of respite allowed Bee to plan her next move. The professor observed the interchange. Sarai defended herself beautifully, the air next to her head wavering slightly with anticipation. The redhead allowed a single step back with a small smile. Sarai tried to lure him toward her. Seeing the disturbance in the air, Nickel aborted his next move at the final moment, opting instead to turn his lunge into a roll. Noble could barely track his movement with her eyes, as if something were distorting her vision from focusing on the man in black armor. Interesting. Noble took all the information in stride. The duel wasn't that different than the end of a team tournament. Any moment of break needed to be used to plan ahead to trick or trap the opponent into making a mistake. The only difference was that the third player in the game was just as likely to attack Noble as help her. What a fun twist. The only time there was a melee like this in the Dreamscape was in the early part of the individual tournaments. Since few wanted to fall by her hand so early, QueenBee had breezed through. Not this time. This time her opponents were powerhouses without fear. Rather than avoid her, they attacked with extra force. Like right now. The energy of the collision between the axe and polearm pushed both of the masters into Noble's path. But Bee was ready. She could have easily lifted her opponents or herself out of the way, but she had promised only to use her new ability. Challenge accepted. As the king's defense drew close, the edge of the blade seemed already tinged with blood. The massive axe arced down to crash upon Noble's head. But then, Nickel grunted, his eyes opening wide. The head of his axe was suddenly much heavier than it had been only a moment ago. It was not so much that he couldn't wield it, but the sudden change in weight made the final landing place of the great axe come up short. His attempt to tame QueenBee came up with only air. A fraction of a second later, Sarai's polearm came from the ground upward, ready to impale the professor in her chest. But then the tip became suddenly as light as a feather. The polearm went high, and Noble was easily able to duck away. As Noble went under Amber's reach, the professor tilted the blade of the sword just above Sarai's cuirass. She didn't want to mortally wound the lovable baker. Noble just wanted to give her a small reminder not to let her guard down. Got you. Only when the flat side of the sword should have crashed against Sarai's side, the air wavered in front of the woman instead. The tip of the sword disappeared into the disturbed air. Noble spun away before the zenith could be fully consumed. With a slight amount of panic, Noble examined her sword. Relief washed over her when she found it was still intact. Noble swung around to face Sarai, ready to defend herself against the beautiful polearm. Only the amber was missing. Did she dismiss it? Noble didn't think she had harmed the weapon enough for it to need to return to Sarai's soul sea, but perhaps Nickel had done something else that she hadn't noticed. Either way, the baker was unarmed. Unwilling to hesitate, Noble bounded at the red-headed opponent. Noble felt Sarai's emotions spike. A twitch of a smile appeared on Sarai's face. Oh no. Adjusting her position, Noble anticipated the trap being sprung. Sarai held out her hand as if gripping at thin air. Without a rain of sparks or any notice, the beautiful polearm slid out of nothingness into existence. The only announcement of its arrival was a small ripple of air where the point broke the plane of reality. The amber atjar glanced off of Noble's armor as it sailed past her. If not for the last-minute position change, the deadly point of the spearhead would have pierced Bee's armor and probably her abdomen. That would have been unpleasant. Yet Noble was all smiles. That's amazing, she said, floating to a stop out of the polearm's reach. Is that you or the memory? All me. Sarai beamed. Whoa. Nick, did you see that? Sarai can, Nick. Noble glanced around the large room. The man in black was missing. When had he left? And why? Did you? Noble raised her eyebrows at the baker. What? No. I don't think my ability works on living things. At least I haven't tried. Sarai bit her lip. If you didn't, Noble got a sinking feeling. Laundry. Where are you? Sarai called anxiously. You don't suppose he went back to the waking world? A malevolent laughter filled the hall. Both women instinctively lifted their weapons. He's here all right. Noble debated whether Sarai and Nickel might be in this trick together, but the redhead's genuine confusion made Noble dismiss the idea. She turned and pressed her back against the baker's. The two women fell silent. With her weapon at the ready, Noble scanned the room for the third member of the group. When her regular sight turned up nothing, she shut her eyes and turned to other methods of detection. Come out wherever you are. Noble felt for the man's emotions. They flickered in and out as if he was both there and not there. Every time she tried to lock onto him, he blipped out of her detection. But he couldn't get away that easily. Noble focused, her eyes swirling behind their closed lids. The combination of her abilities allowed a world of color beyond visible light. Nothing except Sarai moved in the wide range of her sight. Like her other skills, this one had grown to encompass the whole palace and a little beyond. Yet somehow Nickel escaped her notice. What in two worlds? Noble furrowed her brow. Then, she caught a glimpse of him. It was almost too subtle for even her special sight to pick up. If forced to describe it, it was like a flicker in the tapestry of the world. A blip. And that blip was moving at rapid speed. It was on the balcony and a moment later it was in the air. A man in black soared from the railing like a bat from a cave. A cape fluttered behind him, casting a shadow across the floor of the hall. It was as fantastical as it was terrifying. Noble was impressed by her phantom friend's smooth, deft movements until she realized where the mysterious master was headed. Noble needed to act fast. Watch out! Nickel leapt from the balcony with incredible speed. He did not need to fear hitting the ground. Even if he crashed against it, his ascended body would barely register the impact. The man in black smiled as he plummeted toward the earth. The two women were huddled together in a defensive position, making them an easy target for his attack. Victory in this playful bout was all but his. Intel. Watch out. Nickel frowned. For the second time in the match, his axe felt much heavier than it should. It was burdensome to wield normally, but suddenly it was a strain even for his newfound strength. He faltered. Instead of flying like a bird through the air, his trajectory changed to falling like a stone. That's when Nickel realized the warning from Noble had not been for fire, it had been for him. His feet hit the stone floor, sending a spiderweb of cracks around his landing point. The great axe did even more damage, sending shards of marble in a showery spray. Nickel reflexively pulled with all his might against the king's defense to lift it from the floor. Only it didn't weigh the same as a house anymore. It was almost lighter than air. The weapon sailed upward. Nickel had no choice but to release it as his momentum threw him backward. The blade looked like it might fly forever into the sky and never come down, except for one thing, the high ceiling. The tip of the axe cut into the stone and dug deep, sending cracks in every direction. Just when Noble thought the entire weapon might be swallowed, the handle finally halted. All three stared up, with mouths agape. Nickel. Sarai found her voice first. Don't blame me. That blade went crazy all on its own. The man defended himself. He pulled his feet out of the divots his landing had created and brushed off the debris. The redhead pursed her lips. What? No. I'll fix the stone in a moment. I was talking about that leap. I didn't sense you coming at all. You looked like something from a webtoon. It was pretty impressive. Noble tapped her chin. Sorry, I messed up your big moment. It was you. I knew it. I told you not to use your other abilities. Nickel scoffed. Hey, I was using my new ability to do that. If you want to dock me for cheating, it would be because I had to use my special sight to find you. Noble raised her hands in indignation. Even then, the special combination was a skill all its own, so it wasn't exactly against the rules. Nickel opened his mouth to argue when Sarai cut him off. That was so much fun. We have to do it again sometime, but I think that is enough for now. Let's fix the floor and ceiling, and then I have a treat for us. Sarai's offer brought the others out of their possible argument. They nodded and went to work. Like Noble's abilities, Sarai's had grown also. While they weren't quite to Amira's potency, the queen had had many years of experience, and magical bracelets to help her Sarai's flames were immolating in their own right. The baker began by heating the stone. It did not react at first, but eventually, it became soft and then slightly molten for Sarai to smooth over. Noble wasn't sure exactly what the magical process was that the beautiful fire wielder used on the stone, but she could not argue with the results. When Sarai was done with the floor, Noble lifted her friend to the high ceiling to repeat the process. Soon only two glistening, quickly cooling spots remained where the cracks had been. As good as new. Sarai dismissed her atjar, which she had been using like a trawl to smooth the ceiling while she worked. The redhead's feet touched the ground lightly as she looked up at her handiwork. Better than new. Noble stared up at the repaired ceiling. I think you made the stone stronger. Possibly, the redhead deflected, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Now, who is hungry? Nickel and Noble tilted their heads curiously. You want to go hunting? Is that your treat? The librarian frowned. No, I thought it might be nice if we sat and talked over some food. Sarai didn't wait for his retort. Her hand gripped the air and then it shimmered. Instantly a table was pulled out of the nothingness. In the same fashion, 3 chairs followed the first piece of furniture. Finally, a platter of warm treats appeared on a platter. The top one had a small cut across the powder-sugared surface. Sarai frowned. How did that happen? That might be my fault. Noble held out the zenith, which she had sheathed after the abrupt end of the duel. On its tip were still little flakes of white matching the consistency of the missing sugar. Noble smirked. I was wondering what it was, but I wasn't willing to find out the hard way if it was poison. Sarai's cheeks reddened. I guess when I tried to take your sword, you almost took our snack instead. Whoops. I'm still learning how it works. What exactly is it? Nickel studied the air where the table had appeared. You have your own dimensional storage space. Sarai nodded slowly. I can create a little spatial pocket and carry stuff around with me. Nickel blinked at her a few times. Wait, you can carry anything from the waking world to here. Hesitating, the redhead bit her lip. I doubt anything. I am sure there is a limit. These chairs and the table are the biggest things I've tried. I thought we might like them for our meeting. My kitchen looked rather strange without them though, so I'll need to take them back before my roommate notices they're gone. Noble thought about the ramifications of such a power. The objects had appeared almost instantly, much faster than if Sarai had summoned a memory and had to open it to get her things. Such an ability had countless uses. You are going to be rich. Nickel's voice had just a tinge of jealousy. As soon as other awakened find out that you can move things like furniture between worlds, you will have a booming commerce business. You could be the next business mogul of the dream realm. I hadn't thought of that. Sarai's expression soured. But I don't think I would like that very much. I like baking and battling. I don't think being a glorified courier would suit me very well. Nick tapped his chin. But you would bring stuff across for your former cohort member, right? Of course, Sarai paused as she narrowed her gaze, as long as what you are doing is legal and above board. I make no promises. Nickel turned back to the food for another piece of bread. You never do, Noble teased. Sarai giggled, causing the professor to look her way and wink. As the three sat down to eat, the redhead regained her composure. And what about you, Noble? What did you do to make Nickel's axe fly into the ceiling? I have the power to change how heavy or light things are. When I saw Nickel hurtling toward us, I instinctively made his axe 100 times heavier than it was to throw off his aim, but then I panicked when it hit the ground and went the opposite direction, making it light as a feather. Noble scratched the back of her head. I guess we both still have some learning to do. Sarai nodded. You'll get there, I am sure. So tell us, Nick, or should I say Master Celio, what is your new ability? Noble's teasing grin faded as she glanced back to find an empty chair. Nick. The chair where Nickel had just sat down was empty. The man was nowhere in sight. Is his new ability invisibility? Sarai raised her eyebrows and waved her hand over the chair. Noble felt for his emotional signature. He was here, she knew it. She focused on his form and let her second sight take over. Like before, he flickered in and out of existence in her world of strange colors. He was moving swiftly, and Noble struggled to connect the blips of motion to make a cohesive picture. Fortunately, there was a discernible pattern to his actions even in the chaos. So when Nickel turned to head for the palace door, the professor was ready. Got you. Locking onto the black-clad man, Noble lifted Nickel into the air, resulting in a cry of outrage. Blast it. Put me down. Are you going to come back and talk to us? The professor asked as she released the man from her grasp. Nickel returned to the table full of dejection. There goes that test, he sighed. You were testing us. Sarai raised her eyebrows. You just disappeared. Can you turn invisible? Sadly, no. That would have actually been cool. My ability has to do with remaining hidden. I was curious if Noble could still find me like she did one time on the rooftop. It turns out she can. Nickel rolled his eyes. Just as I suspected, another useless ability to add to the list. Noble's eyes opened wide. It's not useless at all. If I hadn't known to look for you, I wouldn't have even been able to detect you. As it was, I had to remember your emotional signature and your shape to lock onto you at all. You were coming in and out of my sight like crazy. You were just saying that. The librarian clicked his tongue. Noble held up her hand. I am not. With a little practice, you'll basically be a ghost. I already was. The man chuckled darkly. With what I do, people don't find evidence that I've been somewhere unless I want them to. Noble wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she shared a different thought instead. For a moment I thought you might also have Derek's skill of slipping through my levitation ability. That would have actually been helpful. Your little pick-me-up trick is too powerful. Nickel scoffed. I shouldn't have admitted I wanted a combat ability. Maybe if I had pretended like I dreaded getting something to do with combat, the spell would have given one just to spite me. That's not how it works, probably, Noble amended. No one knew exactly how the spell worked or how sentient it was. She couldn't deny that it seemed to reward some actions over others. If it could value some choice over others, then it could also value people differently. Did it do things to spite people though? That was unclear. What was clear was that Nickel felt slighted. Sarai picked up the tray of sweet bread and held it out to her discontent companion. Keep your chin up, I am sure there are plenty of ways to use that skill in combat, like you did when you snuck up to the balcony. A large part of battle is being elusive. Nickel took a slice of something chocolatey from the tray and returned to his seat. You are just saying that because you already have a combat aspect. Dismissing his headwear, he stuffed the pastry in his mouth. A small smile formed on his face. This is good stuff. You should consider opening a bakery in the dream realm. Just because you don't want to be a courier for other people's things doesn't mean you can't bring over ingredients from the waking world for yourself. I am glad you like the food. Sarai wiped her mouth daintily with a satisfied grin. I had already thought about the possibility of a second location here in the dream realm. We shall see. Right now all I want to see is more of these baked goods and the loot you two got in that final battle. Nickel nodded firmly. Not so fast. Only if you show all of yours too. Noble could feel that hint of dishonesty in Nickel be snuffed out as the man sighed. Fine. A moment later, around a dozen memories littered the table around the food. That was in addition to the 3 weapons that appeared in the cohort members' hands. Whoa, you guys got so many. Noble had thought getting 3 memories in one day was a lot, but her new stash only accounted for 2 of the items on the table. Don't look at me, Nickel shook his head. Only 3 on the table are mine. That meant, 9 belonged to Sarai. The impressive display included a charm, 3 utility items, a lavish gown that had no right to be a memory, an unconventional suit of armor, and 3 more weapons in addition to the amber. Sarai, you have bewitched the spell. Noble's mouth opened wide. I thought the spell hated me before. Now I know it does. Nickel rubbed his forehead. Sarai bit her lip as a blush crept onto her cheeks. You can each have one if you like. I'm happy with what I have. Noble shook her head. But you really should take her up on that offer, Nick. I think that gown would look stunning on you. The man gave her a withering glare. Everyone knows blue is not my color. He added more seriously. I don't want any favors. I don't want to owe anyone anything. The ladies knew better than to argue with the fiercely independent wraith. Instead, Sarai explained what each of her items did. Noble was intensely interested in getting a closer look at 2 of them. Bring them by the academy when you can, she asked politely. Nickel's explanation of his 3 tools was vague at best. Even after all they had been through, he liked to keep his secrets. They do stuff, he waved his hand dismissively. Nothing too interesting besides the axe. Noble's eyes were immediately drawn to 2 familiar-looking gold bracelets. What about these? The professor lifted them from the table. Did they do what I think they do? They have the concealment aspect of the original bands, but not the power-up, sadly. And since I have an ability that already hides my presence, they are a bit redundant. Nickel was about to add that he didn't look good in jewelry when Noble interrupted. I'll trade you. Without hesitation, the professor held out a dagger from her pair of new memories. It isn't the best quality weapon, but it can dampen any noise made by the wielder. I know. Done. Nickel nodded, immediately transferring the bracelets into Noble's soul. You have received a memory. No refunds, Nickel smirked. Wouldn't dream of it. Noble transferred the dagger to her companion. Noble motioned to her final memory on the table. Since you already have seen the Zenith in action, I'll just tell you about this one. It's called Hummingbird's Wings and gives short bursts of speed. I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm hoping since there is a reference to flight in the name that it will also work in the air. The other 2 looked at the small charm. Noble already had a fire charm, so she would either have to switch out the memories as needed or use extra essence to wield both. Time would tell what the best use of resources would be. Anything else of note? With a full stomach, Nickel seemed just about ready to go. Noble couldn't blame him too much. There were a lot of things that needed doing both here and in the waking world. I got a true name. Before you ask, it's Child of Promise. Noble breezed through the information, but I don't think that will interest you as much as my other news. The professor paused and frowned. But I am afraid it will have to wait. We have run out of time. Noble's words were punctuated by a loud pounding on the front door. She smiled apologetically. It seems our neighbors are already here to pay us a visit. We shouldn't keep them waiting. After quickly putting away the table and chairs, Sarai still had to take them home with her. The trio walked to the door. Noble had sensed the newcomer coming before he knocked. Her sensitivity had grown as well as her range, so the introduction of a new person after only feeling two other people's emotions had pricked her internal alarm. Fortunately, the man coming was not an enemy. At least they had the courtesy to knock, Sarai said to break the silence. But how did they know anyone was here? I am sure they have been monitoring this place non-stop since the gateway appeared, Nickel shrugged. Nothing as sinister as that. Noble waved off his paranoia. The government wanted to meet with us, and so I said we would be here this afternoon if they wanted to chat. A neighborly chat, or something specific. Sarai resisted the urge to wring their hands. It's the government, Fanfiction, not a housewarming party. They aren't here to bring us flowers and say welcome back to the dream realm, Nickel scoffed. Why don't we hear what they have to say before passing judgment? Noble rolled her eyes. You already know what they are going to say, don't you? The librarian cut his eyes at Noble. Fort gave me a vague idea of what would likely be discussed. These conversations will have to happen sooner or later, so it is better that it happens while we are all present, don't you think? Noble hurried her steps as another knock on the door echoed through the hall. We are coming, she called, unsure if the visitor would hear. By the time they finally reached the door, Nickel had already donned his black mask to conceal his face. Only his eyes peered out from the thick fabric, making his presence ominous. After a short nod from each of the others, Noble used her levitation to open one of the large, heavy doors. A startled young man had his hand lifted for a third attempt at knocking. He lowered his knuckles and smiled amiably. Master Noble, I am glad you are here. I thought perhaps I might have missed you. Awakened Venster, it is good to see you. I am sorry we kept you waiting. It was a long walk from where we were seated, Noble explained. Venster nodded. Of course. And these are your associates. Ascended Sarai and Ascended Celio. I guess I do not need to introduce them then. Noble nodded. This is Awakened Venster. He works for the Chancellor and is also stationed at Ender's Deep. It's nice to meet you. Sarai held out her hand for the government agent to shake. Nickel gave a curt nod but said nothing. I hope I am not interrupting too much, but I would like to see if you three would be willing to have a short meeting with us at Ender's Deep. Venster's polite manner was met with a scowl from the black-clad man. How brief and a meeting with whom? Nickel's voice was deep, sounding more like a monster's growl than his usual pleasant timbre. Part of his persona, I guess. Noble tried not to act rattled by the change. You can leave any time. Master Celio. If time is an issue, perhaps we can schedule another day to meet. Venter's words did not match his feelings. The idea of rescheduling made him nervous. No, I'm already here. Let's get this over with. Nickel shrugged and strode forward. Venster's shoulders relaxed and he nodded. Very good. If you will all follow me. Noble allowed Nickel and Venster to take the lead. While the government spy questioned their escort, Noble and Sarai took in the state of the world around them. My, how things had changed from the last time they had seen Crestfall. The professor looked at the ruins around her in a new light. She hadn't spent much time outside of the palace, but she could still remember her mad dash through the streets in the first stages of the final battle. Those moments would be forever ingrained in her memory. Now the rubble made the distinction between what was once street and building nearly impossible. A sound in the distance caught Noble's attention. It was hammering. Usually, none of the locals came to the surface. They had self-sustaining methods of living on the cliff face, so the rubble of the ruined kingdom was left uninhabited. Yet, when Noble looked, she saw a handful of awakened in the distance working feverishly with some of the fallen stones. What are they doing? Sarai asked before Noble could. Venster looked over his shoulder at the beautiful baker. What else? They are building. Noble squinted. A wall. The new gateway will draw the attention of all sorts of nightmare creatures. It doesn't have the natural protection that Ender's Deep does. So it was decided a wall must be built. Venster answered matter-of-factly. He turned around a broken piece of ground where 2 sentries were waiting. Together they pulled back a large boulder to reveal a surprising sight. Since when is there an entrance here? Noble pursed her lips as she looked at the narrow tunnel. The only way to get to the surface previously was to climb up from the chasm, fly up, or find a crevice that was wide enough to fit through. Rubbing the back of his neck, Venster cleared his throat. The passage has been recently dug to accommodate the changing landscape. Right this way. Venster was right, the passage was very recent indeed. The loose dirt from the hastily cleared rock was still sifting its way to the ground. The professor could already guess how that would feel if any of it managed to touch her skin. Noble winced. You all go ahead. I'll meet you below. See you soon. Sarai smiled and waved her off before Venster could question. The redhead ushered the government agent forward as Noble headed around the boulder and away from view. Even though she wanted to avoid the pain of brushing up against the ground in the tunnel, she wasn't yet ready to go flying around in front of the general public. So she chose a covert spot before tumbling over the ridge and floating down to the first level of Ender's Deep. The others met her there a short while later, still brushing off the rubble from their trek. Noble greeted them warmly. There you are. If Venster wondered at her sudden appearance, he didn't comment. The amiable young man simply motioned her forward. The deeper into the citadel they went, the more somber Venster became. By the time they made it to the stone-walled meeting room, the young awakened was all business. Venster knocked lightly. He opened the door and stuck his head into the room. The three masters from the palace are here. Please send our guests in. Noble heard the voice and immediately knew to whom it belonged. She hadn't listened to the man speak often, but his distinctive cadence and authority were unmistakable. With a bow, Venster opened the door and admitted the three guests in to see their gracious host. That host was the Saint of the Citadel. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.